Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pressing Forward podcast. Today, I'm fortunate enough to have with me Major Nishan Campbell. He's a United States Marine, and he's also the owner of Gunfighter Canyon. If you haven't checked that out, you definitely have to. Busy man. He's currently still serving in the Marine Corps. He's in his office right now, and he's taking the time to sit with us and talk about his career today. So, Nishan, how you doing today, brother?
Hey, brother, thanks so much for having me. I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm sitting here in Tampa, Florida, kind of like end of the day for drill here. And got in late last night from Arizona. So we'll burn the midnight oil a little bit tonight, but it won't be too bad.
Yeah, no, that's to see that you're still, I mean, I know there's plenty of other Marines out there that do the reserve side of things, but um still contributing to the entity that is the Marine Corps. You've got your own business that you're a busy guy. So it's awesome to see that there you're able to handle all that stuff. Be an effective leader, be a business owner, and still take time out of your day to sit down with myself and do a little podcast episode. So I appreciate you.
Happy to do it, brother. Happy to do it.
So I guess we'll just jump right into it then. Starting off, like, where did you grow up in Arizona, or is that where you transplanted to?
Yeah, so I grew up in the West Valley of Phoenix, a little area called Litchfield Park, Waddell, more specifically. People will know a little bit more about it now, but yeah, pretty much out in the cotton fields of Western Arizona, enjoying the lovely heat that we've had. So, sorry, trying to make sure my company commanders here are good.
That's
Anyways, yeah, we got like half the battalion drilling this weekend, so some are still running around doing stuff, but we're good. Sorry about that.
no.
Yeah, group of Phoenix. Did my undergrad in South Carolina. 9/11 happened. I was 18. Um, had taken some college courses at the community college. One of those weird kids that was homeschooled during high school, so I taken actually quite a bit of, I think I was like 30 credit hours or something when 9/11 happened. And on 9/12, I was downtown Phoenix with like all the other, patriots at that time that were just like, hey, I'm ready to go. I want to serve. And I literally stood in line around the central Phoenix building at the recruiting station there with the Marine Corps for, I mean, I want to say it was like 4 or 5 hours,
Oh
and
shit!
just
Just to
lined
just to
up
get
to
in
go.
to talk to a
Yeah,
recruiter, right?
just to talk to a recruiter.
That
Yeah, and it was a staff sergeant. I wish I remember his name, but I remember he looked at me when it was my turn, and it was just like, hey man, you've got some college. You actually do a questionnaire, and like, hey, you've got a significant amount of college done already. I'm not going to take your application today. And I was like so crushed because I wanted to enlist. Like that was it. Like I was like, again, I was not alone. There was a lot of dudes in line before I got there, and he says, no, he says, come back as an officer, finish college, and the fight will still be here. I've got plenty of applications today, and I'm sure if you could go back and look at like what the recruiting efforts were on 9/12, and probably like the next several months,
Yeah,
it
they
was
just had
probably
to,
just incredible.
yeah, just had to sit back. They weren't like canvassing high schools and shit. They just like, all right, here's a stack of paperwork, fill this out,
Yep.
like just a
Yep.
quick processing line. Yeah, it's wild to see, and again, like, that 9/12, like, and how unified the country was, and how people were willing to stand, like young men and women were willing to stand up and sign their name on the dotted line, you know, like not knowing that the global war on terror was going to
Yeah.
kick off and this 20-year war was going to ensue. So you get kind of pushed back by the recruiter, says go finish some college. Where did you ultimately end up finishing your degree?
I went to a small school in Greenville, South Carolina called Bob Jones University. I had an academic scholarship that was, kind of forced me into that rabbit hole. I probably wouldn't have picked that school today for myself, but got through that. Thought I was going to kind of go the JAG officer route. Didn't get good enough grades to get into law school. Came back to Phoenix, and I started working for a little company, CBS Broadcasting, and I sold advertising for them for almost 5 years. And there's like a big gap between when I said I was going to enlist and when I graduated from college. And my wife and I were getting ready to have our first child, and I think we were at a place where I was ready for a transition. Like I was too young to be in like a leadership program or a leadership position, I think, in corporate America at that point in time. And clearly, like maturity wise, I wasn't there. And so, I walked back down to that same exact recruiting office. It was like literally right down from my office in downtown Phoenix. And, this time I went to go see the OSO. And, here I was, considerably older than most folks that are, well, not considerably, 4 to 5 years older than most folks going to OCS, and kind of went that route. And I remember it was a captain at the time, Captain Burnett. He was a 53 pilot. And he was transitioning out. So we were both kind of like, he's like, "You sure you want to come in?" And and he's like, I'm looking at like, "What's your job like? That seems kind of cool." But he was great. And yeah, had to drop a ton of weight. I mean, I dropped like 40 pounds, 40 pounds exactly to get into the fitness that you needed to do to go to OCS.
Okay.
And yeah.
Now, with that, like, what was it that, you're thinking this lifestyle in corporate America, young for this leadership role and everything. What was it that churned those wheels of getting you to like, was it always in the back of your head that to go and serve?
Yeah. So I think it was kind of like, I had friends that had jumped right in. And so, they were still in the fight. And this was 2007. So, I mean, it was hot and heavy at that point in time. So I felt like I was really missing the bus. And, that whole idea of, hey, that 912, how we all felt in 912, we've kind of grown further and further from that. And so, I'm looking at my family going, well, is this what for me, just to kind of be a corporate media guy? And this is, all it's going to be. And so that was a kind of a depressing wake up moment, because it was that I was going to stick in and kind of work that route and do who knows what with CBS or one of the other big broadcast companies. But that wasn't like my long term goal. I wanted to serve. I wanted to do I want to do what Marines do. I want to be a Marine. I mean, I think the selfish thing we all have is like, hey, at the end of the day, you want to earn that title. And so I was young enough to stay. I could still do it, but I had a long road. Like it was not like an easy, yeah, hop right in, take a PFT, and go to OCS.
Right.
So
So on top of the things that you had to do to prepare yourself physically, for that transition to go into the Marine Corps, how did you prepare yourself mentally? Like you've already established a family at this point. Was
yep.
there, like a little pushback from your wife when you had said like, "Hey, this is what I want to do," or is this something you guys had already talked about and you knew that you were going to make this decision?
Yeah, no, I was fortunate enough that my wife grew up in a military family. She was actually born in the Philippines, an Air Force brat. So she kind of knew the lifestyle, and I think she knew like this, staying in corporate America and staying on this route was going to kind of lead us down a different path for our family. And so I definitely had her support like from the jump. It was a difficult thing. I think her father at the time had a stroke and passed away. So there was like, all these little cascading events that led us to saying we're going to put our house in the market, and move to Quantico and go down this route.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's huge. That's a big life change. I mean, thinking about, myself, 17 years old when I enlisted, and I didn't have all that, I don't want to call it baggage, but responsibility,
yeah, yeah,
that I had to take with me. It was like, well, see you later, mom. Like I got on the phone and called my mommy at MCRD and said, I'm here. I'm not worried about a child. I'm not worried about, selling my house or somebody backing out of that contract. All those little things that you
yeah,
have to incorporate as being like an adult, in a situation like that, and you being able to obviously successfully pull it off because you are where you are today. Now that transition then from civilian life and working in corporate America, being a father, being a husband, and then you're just like thrown into OCS, you go to the basic school and everything. You want to kind of run me through, that process for you.
yeah. I'll tell you. So the one thing I like to explain to folks, they're like, how is it going to OCS? Definitely, 4 or 5 years older than everybody else. Um, And number one, you kind of link up with the Mustangs because they're all about your age anyways, right? So some of my best friends come from that time period that were all prior enlisted guys. But the hardest part for me is going from a guy with an expense account that literally ate a new restaurant every single day for lunch. And I remember sitting down for my first meal at OCS and just getting, berated, just like all of us did, right? And I'm sitting there going, I don't know how to eat this food in the manner that you're asking me to eat it. And in my head, it was like something turned off, going, like, I am not having a Jack and Coke and a filet mignon for lunch right now.
Yeah.
I need to get this in my body so I can survive. And I remember I did not eat it all that first meal. I mean, it was like, just
Like
pure chaos, like
yeah,
everybody.
it's very overwhelming, and especially
Yeah, yeah,
being
yeah.
like you've already put your big boy pants on in life, like you've already established been an established man, and now you're being treated, you're like, what the fuck is
Yeah, what
this,
did
dude?
I do?
What
What
did
did I
what
do?
decision did I make here? It's funny to see, looking back on situations like that, and I'm sure that we can correlate similarities between, like, just going to MCRD and then going to Quantico, in the way that the drill instructor, you guys call them drill instructors when you're at
They're called
OCS?
Yeah, they're called sergeant instructors at OCS.
Okay, okay.
Very
But
similar.
still you got some like staff sergeant that was in Ramadi, or some gunnery sergeant that,
Oh yeah.
like whatever, is like screaming in your face, and you're like trying to, the lunch lady from Billy Madison's like, here's some sloppy joes for you, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing, man?
What am I doing?
Yeah, that's funny. So did you think that once you were immersed in the environment and you kind of overcame that initial obstacle of like the chaos and everything, do you think that you excelled when you were at OCS?
No, I didn't excel. I mean, I read Nate Fick's book, One Bullet Away, and I think a lot of Marine officers at that time read Nate Fick's book, One Bullet Away, which they ended up turning into a miniseries, Generation Kill.
Yep.
Um, so that red book, is in my library today, and I'm sure my sons will read it here pretty soon. But his whole take, I mean, he was on the MEU on 9/11, and so there was a small contingency operation that they I don't say small, it was like a contingency operation that they conducted during his time on the MEU prior to coming back to the United States and actually training to go to Iraq. So he kind of laid that groundwork, I think, for all of us that wanted to become rifle platoon commanders. And so you have that, like, you have an idea of what it's going to be, and then you get there, and for a guy that was in his mid 20s, going, wow, I traded you know this for that. This is crazy. But you only think that for a second, and you get through OCS, and OCS is, some guys will tell you it's like insanely difficult. Some will tell you it was not that hard, but it's a physical event, and I think that's the big difference between, MCRD. And I did go to MCRD, so I mean, I can't
Right,
say that,
right.
but I mean, you did, and a lot of my prior enlisted friends will say the same thing. It's like MCRD is like it's like a mental breakdown, right? It's a mental breakdown and a build up. And again, I was never a recruiter or a or drill, on the drill field, so I can't speak to that philosophy directly. But being someone that went through OCS, I can tell you, like, the big difference is that physical component. You're gonna get slayed as an MCRD, like everybody knows that. But on the officer side, like, they need to like really focus on that, because that's the first test of your character, because it's a job interview,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
everyone takes that, like OCS is a 3 month job interview, and we had high attrition rate at mine. I want to say it was probably we probably graduated for OCS. I want to say we graduated like just under 70%, maybe closer to 60%
Right.
of our class. So um, I don't know where it's at today or where it's going. We can't speak to that, but um, that was it was a time where, hey, I just needed to get through it. You go chow to chow, bell to bell, try to get over that damn bridge.
Yeah.
You talk to any officer, I'll tell you, like, they know the bridge
Right,
to
which,
the
yeah.
Bobo Chow Hall, right? Like, you got to run over that damn bridge. So
Well,
yeah,
I think when you talk about an officer and like that, focusing on that physical fitness point of things, like if you go back to, and not to say today that officers don't lead from the front, but to embody that mindset of like a Dick Winters or a Brian Chantosh,
for
like
sure. Yep.
literally be like, when you see that scene in Band of Brothers, and it's like he's like, when you see the smoke, like move on my command, and Winters is already
Yep.
like 100 meters in front of
Yep.
everybody else, like
Yep.
that is the physical specimen that you need to be at when you're leading men. Like, you talk about a guy like Brian Chantosh, and he's in,
Yep.
yeah, I think, was it Fallujah that they were in, or maybe
Hmm.
the
Yep.
invasion, and this guy's like jumping out of the Humvee, taking down insurgents, moving ahead of his Marines, like picking up
Yep.
enemy weapons, and like moving through a trench essentially and taking down enemy combatants. It's like, if you're not physically fit, like, how are you going to lead from the rear, like
You
how
can't
are you
read
going
from
to
the back. Yep.
exactly. So with that, did once you finished OCS, do you think that you were up to a baseline standard of, where you should be at for an officer?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this, and this is where I say like I had to lose a bunch of weight to just get into OCS, right? And there's a lot of folks that need to do that to go to boot camp, but you cannot go to OCS without a high first class PFT. So you're already in great shape. If you're not running like a 280 something on the old PFT, like you're not going to make it through OCS. So you show up in fantastic shape, and then you're going to take like I think like the mid PFT you do halfway through will be probably the best PFT you ever do in your life, and then your body starts to break down. So you start to get to this point where it's like I need to survive, I need to not get injured, and make it through OCS. So I think a lot of us came out of OCS. A lot of people do come out of OCS with stress fractures, and so if you drop right into a TBS company like I did, you're gonna break yourself. So like I got recycled at TBS because I had a compound fracture in my left foot. Shouldn't have happened. It's just too many miles on the boots, and my short little legs trying to keep them in humps. Eventually, it just snapped.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I got recycled at TBS, but that's kind of where, on the officer side of the house, if you want to start separating yourself, I think, from your peers, is because that's the first time you're really competing for something.
Yep.
And at TBS, we're competing for our jobs. So, right from the jump, I thought, hey, I was gonna at that point maybe be a public affairs officer, but you get a couple little tastes of what it's like to be, in the combat arms side at TBS, and you change your mind pretty quick. And I did. Like I would tell you, within maybe a month of TBS, I was like, nope, I want to be an AAV officer. I want to
Yeah.
be in an amphibious assault role.
6 months, right, at
Yeah,
TBS. Yeah.
yep,
So
6 months.
when
Yeah,
you're there, and just to give the listeners an idea of what TBS is like, it's basically um like SOI for an officer, right? In the sense that
yep,
you're going to learn how to be like, regardless of what your MOS is going to be after you finish TBS, like that's where everybody learns to be like a basic infantry platoon commander, correct?
that's correct. Yep,
Okay.
you nailed it. I've heard comparisons to say like, hey, it's really similar to like Ranger School, which is more of a leadership school than it is, I think, soft skills, and even hard skills. But yeah, I mean, I do know, like, and you get some rangers that would fight me on this, but there's more land nav at TBS, and I think where that whole like a lieutenant can't land nav starts
Yeah.
from is because like you land nav a lot. I was fortunate, to grow up, hunting big game, so land nav just was super easy for me. It's like, oh, I can find a terrain feature, I know how to get over to that pond, like I'll figure it out.
Yep.
So I love land nav. Like that was, the greatest thing for me because I was one of the first couple of guys done back at, eat my MRE by the side of the road, go and pick me up. I'm ready to go back. But yeah, TBS is where you compete, man. So I mean, OCS, you just want to get through it, get done. But TBS, it's like, hey, if you want a job, especially a low density job, like what I wanted. I mean, I wanted to be an amphibious assault officer, like right off the jump.
So real
And
quick, let
so
me let me ask you then, what was it about being an amphibious assault officer or what is it that drew you to that, opposed from being like any other job that you can choose,
yeah,
or even being an infantry platoon commander? What was it that drew you to that?
so when I went in, I was going to do 4 years and I was going to punch. Like I wanted to do my time. I wanted to get deployment in. I wanted to help out. And so to me, when you look at the autonomy and decision making ability of all the lieutenants across the Marine Corps, the ability to make decisions and impact, like have real impact. There's kind of two MOSs, maybe three on the combat arms side, where you have a lot of autonomy. I would say that you look at LAR, they generally operate in platoon size elements. That's pretty, what I'm talking about.
I was with
So your platoon
LAR.
commander, yeah, brother. So like your platoon commander had a lot of autonomy. Like he was never with the company, doing company rated ops, and pretty rare. So LAR be one of them. The next one would be tankers, right? Because you typically fight as a tank platoon, which is 4 tanks. We don't have many more, but that's another conversation. And then amphibious assault, like we never, like ever operate as on a company level unless we're going to go do like some major, SLTE, some big exercise. You're not operating on the company level because you're supporting an infantry battalion.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because that
Yep.
you get like platoons or however you guys break it down with tracks,
Yep.
that would get dished out to different infantry battalions, so like you
That's
guys are
correct.
tracking grunts into the fight, and like you've got that capability of your like the convoy commander, like the you're in like
Yep.
once that like that infantry platoon commander may have a say when they're on the deck, but once they get in, like you are the man in charge. You know, when you're in that VC seat
Yeah.
or whatever, like you are in charge of what's going on. And so I understand that. I was for a second I was gonna say like, oh man, I forgot that tanks is, but you were well before they would got the
Yeah. Yeah.
tanks
Yeah.
out of the picture. So you're at TBS and you get this inkling that you want to be an AAV, you know, platoon commander, right? And it's
Yeah.
amphibious assault platoon commander. What then is there like a point at TBS where you kind of like split off and do, or is it, you know, everybody's doing the same thing throughout the entire 6 months?
Yeah, it's just like, I was, like I would say SOI is for you all is yeah, you do the same thing. And there, I mean, you guys would split up, right? And like, hey, you're gonna be a mortarman, you're gonna be, a machine gunner. But no, at CBS, like you go the full gambit. You're gonna do, your squad live fire, your platoon live fire attacks. You're gonna do setting the defense. You're gonna go in the offense, from a platoon size element. You're gonna go with platoon reinforced. So, the whole time you're kind of competing for those difficult billets at TBS. I have some good friends of mine that were TBS instructors after the fact, and we laugh because you don't want those billets really when you're a student, but you realize after the fact that those were really crucial to getting the MOS you wanted. But the the ability in AVs, right? Like if I could go back and say, hey, Nishan, you're going to make a career out of this, is the amphibious assault route the best? And if I could go back and say, you probably should have been an infantry officer, right? Because that's gonna, take you the furthest projection you can go, and you can lead a regiment. Being a division commander, as an 0302 is, a lot more probable than an 1803. But at that time, my focus was what's going to be the best possibility for me to operate, have the most impact, and so me AVs. I mean, AVs was number one. Tanks was number two, and LAR was number three. So it was like
Okay.
those three elements. So that was important to me. But now, come full circle. I left. I did 5 years active duty, 2 deployments, and when the reserves started calling me back, and I know I'm skipping ahead here. You're going, wow, there's one AV battalion, amphibious assault battalion, and I should stay away from saying AV because that's no longer kind of our,
Yeah,
our part of our mission and focus.
what's the new vehicles? It's not an a amphibious assault vehicle. It's like a amphibious uh what are they called? ATVs or
Yeah,
something?
it's called an ACV, an amphibious
ACV, yeah.
combat vehicle.
Yeah.
Yep. And then with the whole littoral regiment for the new force design, we're starting to incorporate boats. So I can't really get into a whole lot of that stuff, but it's really exciting to be like in our community right now because I mean we're again what's really cool about the amphibious assault community is we're that connector between Big Blue Navy and the Green.
Yep.
And
Yep.
my first deployment was on a ship, so I love the fact that I was given a brief to the ship's captain, going, "This is how we're going to get from your big boat to the objective and come back."
And you're
And
talking to this captain that's like, you know, this is his boat, and you're like
this
briefing
is
him like,
his.
"Hey, sir, this
Yep,
is how it's gonna go, all right?" And I'm
it's
telling
so
you this is how
cool.
it's gonna go. Yeah, that's I know what you're saying in the sense of one time we had well, I've actually been in presence of like multiple high-ranking officers, and I mean that I mean like you know like brigadier generals, major generals. You know, and they come out to observe training or even in combat. I met General Berger when he was a two-star.
Oh, right on.
He came out, shook my hand, gave me a challenge coin. I met the commandant when I was in Afghanistan, a young squad leader. He gave me his challenge coin.
Very
But you
cool.
know, like being able to sit there and like I would give patrol briefs to a battalion commander, you know, or you know, if I'm up there, Lance Corporal
Yeah,
Giuliano, you know, I'm giving a patrol briefing and talking about significant acts and you know all these different things and it's like you get this sense and I know we jumped ahead but you get this sense of confidence in yourself that you look back at that and you're like holy shit, you know, like I was a 19, 20-year-old kid and I'm out here
yeah,
giving pre-patrol briefs to, you know, a command staff of you know it was crazy. So it is a good feeling and I can resonate with you on that level.
yeah.
It is awesome. It feels good. And real quick before I want to jump back and finishing up TBS, but you know, when you mentioned the boat thing, we don't have to get crazy into it, but I've seen more and more content on social media, you know, not only, and I know the guys were doing like Navy's got the Swick boat stuff and, you know, Coast Guard's doing all that,
Yeah.
but it seems like the Marine Corps has really, and I know that up and down the Tigris and the Euphrates, there's plenty of boat teams that were set up to do, you know,
And
try out.
those were all Amtrakers, by the way.
Were they really?
So yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay,
So we're
okay.
kind of going back. kind of ebb and flow back and forth to our roots. I love that you
Yeah.
brought that up because I've got a hard drive from my last master gunner sergeant that was in the three shop with me, and he's got so much just super cool content from them doing boat missions on the Euphrates,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's like
so cool.
so
So
cool,
cool.
so cool.
But yeah, that is something that's like I'm thinking in my head like where the fuck was this option when I was in the Marine Corps?
Right,
Like
right.
dual 240s or a minigun on some little rib boat or like, whatever kind of boats they're using and you're like ripping around. I mean, that would be freaking sweet. So going back to, you're in TBS and you figured out that this is the route that you want to take.
Yep.
Um, is there anything significant that you can take away or like a key leadership point or something that you hold you know, yourself to that, you know, I'm trying to think of the right words here. Is there anything that comes to mind that like it was an installation of leadership in you that you're like you carry that trait on to this day?
That's a good question. I think what TBS teaches you is you have to know as much as possible when it comes to your dudes and what their capabilities and limitations are. Um, I was fortunate enough to be one of the live fire platoon commanders. I don't remember the name of the range, but it was right at the very end. It was kind of like the culminating event where you got to actually call for fire. I think I had 60s on station, and then yeah, like I think I had a section of 60s, and then your platoon reinforced with a machine gun team, and you go do this full live fire maneuver, and I just remember giving that brief, and that's kind of like you're building up for that brief after a long field exercise and the instructor's kind of pulling me aside, going, "Hey, you were super passionate. Like, it was a great brief. You hit all the wickets, blah blah blah." But the criticism they gave me, I'll never forget because I'm an animated person. I like to get into it and kind of bring that emotional level up and down. And they said, "Remember when you touched that emotional piece, you're pulling that thread just a little bit further, and you're gonna run out eventually. So be really, really careful at how often you try to get everyone's emotions up or down. Try to, and so I took that and realized, had no idea, like I'm probably pulling that too much and being overly dramatic or understating certain things. And so even now I kind of I go back to that and think I need to make sure that I'm taking a really good temperature, an emotional temperature of what's going on around me before I try to change that temperature.
Yeah,
So as a
that's
leader, I think it's an easy thing to overlook, but you can't. You've got to continually take that assessment and go, I can only pull this string so far.
that's
I need that emotion.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point to hit on because I think that there's a lot of, I mean, on your small unit leadership level to, company staff, whatever it may be, I
Yeah,
think that there's a lot of leaders that don't understand that and they don't take a step back to see their Marines from the outside, looking in and being like, this is the environment right now. This is how everybody's feeling. They may have a certain way of, doing a briefing or getting a message across, or if there is like a traumatic incident happens or something like that, they don't gauge the environment or like the what's I don't want to say feng shui, but like the vibe of what's
yeah, the
going on,
vibe.
so you're able, being able to be the leader that picks up on that thing and things like that, and how to properly gauge the situation that you're in. Like that is a one you said it's very like it's overlooked or underlooked, like a lot of people just look past that, and I think that's an important factor. So if there's any young leaders out there, that's a lesson to take from Nishan here. So that's a good one. I appreciate you sharing that. Now when you wrap up at TBS, how do you feel? Because you have to go to AAV school. Is there like a certain
Yep.
school that you go to after? But how did you feel once you had completed TBS and you knew that you were going on to that next level? Like, was there like a huge sense of relief, accomplishment, eagerness to get out there and get after that next mission, or how were you feeling?
Yeah, so I think for me, like the peak at TBS was the MOS selection day, and my SPC staff platoon commander was a guy by the name of Captain Andrew Bauer. He's a lieutenant colonel now, and I got to meet up with him this last year, and I haven't seen him since. So it was really cool to meet up with him. But and you're dropping hints all the time, like this is what I want, this is what I think I'll be best at, and they keep it really close handed. And so, when it's time to, and they all kind of have their ways that they, hey, you've been assigned this MOS. I just remember like getting that MOS and going, okay, like all the work I did, and at that point it's not very significant, but you're like, okay, I've worked towards this goal, and now I get the chance to go to the school and actually get the MOS. And so my wife was pregnant with our second child at the time, and so I knew like, hey, I wanted to be at Pendleton. It would be close to family. I knew that a deployment was really going to happen very quickly after the AO course, and so it was just like, okay, next step, base housing, do a big PCS with your pregnant wife and small child that's 2 years old, and then get ready to jump right into the AO course. So
And what is the what's the AO course? What is that?
the amphibious officer
Oh,
course is
okay,
in,
amphibious
yeah,
officer. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, and that's right there. It's literally right next door to third track. So you've got third Assault Amphibian Battalion, and right next door it's a big, beautiful building that's been there. It was new when we stepped on deck. I'm a little older now, but
What part of Pendleton
yeah,
is that in again? What do they call that? It's not Las Pulgas is where artillery is. Where
that's correct.
what's
The best part of Camp Pendleton,
you're
21 area, Camp
yeah,
Del Mar.
Del
Yeah,
Mar, yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, I've never actually been down there myself, but I mean I've spent plenty of time at Camp Pendleton. Um what how's the your wife being pregnant with your second child, and you guys are like picking up and going from Quantico, and now you're shifting all the way across the country to go to California. There's got to be some heightened levels of stress and obviously worrying about like doctor, hospital, housing, fucking, all of those things. How were you guys able to, excuse me, adapt to those stressors while you're making this whole new like journey?
I think so. The bigger question, and that's a really good question, Michael. Like the bigger issue is, you know, how do you internalize that and break it up into small pieces? Because you it's so easy to get overwhelmed, like not just Marine Corps business life, right? We generally get overwhelmed, and I've learned this over the years because of an unknown, right? That's where fears are always based on the unknown, and then you can break up that unknown into small, manageable pieces. And I like to sit in front of a whiteboard, like I probably in the last 10 years, the whiteboard's been my best thinking machine, whether it's by myself or with people. So, you just got to break it up. And, then, Lieutenant Campbell, hey, we just like, okay, step one, find base housing. We knew we want to live on base. We got super lucky. We were to live like right in the 21 area, Camp Del Mar, brand new officer housing. It was, super lucky. One of my friends from TBS got the same battalion, and his wife, they had kids too. So it was like, okay, we had a connection. Okay, cool. Step two, okay, check into the Naval Hospital. Step three, check into the unit. Do that whole, rigmarole. But I was a little bit older, right? So
Right.
a lot of the stuff like wasn't quite, to the point where like some of the young guys, like if they get married super young and or they don't, I mean, I can see like, yeah, you've got a little extra responsibility as an older married guy with a kid, but also you have a little more life experience too. So you can kind of break it up into manageable pieces and, um, you know, make it work. So yeah, sure. The Marine Corps does a good job making you look through the Marine Corps planning process and go, what's my end state, and then kind of backtrack everything from there.
Yeah, that's a good way to break that down. And like something that my mom always says to me is you can eat an elephant one bite at a time.
That's
So
right.
it's like you can get overwhelmed at the size of the problem or the size of whatever you're taking on. But if you take a step back and you're like start by these small little steps, and
Yep.
I think it's good for you to relay that message on the thing, like because myself included, there's a lot of, anybody, it doesn't have to be a veteran or a service member that's experiencing this, but anybody can take a little bit of knowledge from you in that aspect because it's like, wow, that's so overwhelming. There's so much to take on. And you're like, well, yeah, but at the same time, like I looked at all the things that I had going in my favor, the group of people supporting me, knowing that I had a stable, job and I was going to a new place, a beautiful place, had the house set up and all these things start to fall into place and we take so much time to at least I do, and if I do, I know that there's at least one other person out there that does as well. So if this message gets to them, and regardless of the situation that they're in, they're like, maybe it's a good reminder to be like, okay, shit. you're right. I've got a lot of stuff on my plate right now, but if I am able to, take an outside look at it and this is where I want to be, this is what I have to do to get there. It's very, I wouldn't say easy, but there's a process that you can take to accomplish what that mission is ahead of you. So you get the 21 area. What year is this? Like '09 maybe?
Yep, yeah, and '09. Yep,
Okay. End of '09, you get to Camp Pendleton. You're with 3rd Amphibious Assault Battalion. You probably know
yep.
some of the guys. How long were you with 3rd Tracks for?
Till the end of 2012.
And okay, shit. So maybe not. Does Devin Munoz or Kyle Grumman or Mohammed Hassan ring a bell to you?
They don't. They
Okay,
don't.
I don't know what company
Yeah,
they were with because I
yeah.
was with Cab in
Okay.
2013. I was
Oh,
in
right on.
Okinawa, so
Yeah,
bunch of dudes that I had met from tracks there. They were all 3rd Tracks. Some of the guys I still talk to today actually, but it would have been
right on.
another one of those small world instances. Um, so you get the 3rd AAV or 3rd Amphibious Assault Battalion.
Yep.
What is the how is that coming into a new environment, a new platoon? As a young officer, well, a junior officer.
Yeah, I mean, so I got, I had to wait a couple of months before I went to AO school. So I did OJT training. I went and worked at like the 3 Zulu and the S3 shop. And this is when 3rd Tracks had its old building, which is one of the meth buildings now. And yeah, I got to work with, some great guys in that and kind of work with a master guns for the first time. And all your first things are kind of cool. And then go to school. And AO courses, was just a blast. Like I could do AO course over and over again. It was just, you know, operating in the water, in the ocean, going to 29 Palms. I mean, it was just the AO course was really, we had been an awesome primary instructor. His name was Captain Driscoll. He's a major now, but prior enlisted guy, and it was great, just a great. You really learned, and you really got to operate, and just finally do your job. So you finish that up, and then I checked into Alpha Company at 3rd Tracks, and was super cool because I had a very salty gunny. As an AAV platoon commander, your platoon sergeant is a gunny, and some salty, staff sergeants that had all come back from Fallujah. And so, I just went to work and, explained like for me, the big thing was, hey, I'm a little bit older. I'm not coming in here to like change your guys' game up. I'm here to learn and provide value where I can provide value and kind of take that approach. You never want to be, no lieutenant you talk to wants to be a guy that comes in and is like, I'm the new guy and I'm going to change everything. No one wants to do that, but everyone, eventually kind of gets there because you're ready to go. I mean, you've been the pipeline. You're ready to do your job. So yeah, I remember the first couple of field ops. I just kind of sat back and watched watch what went on and observed and learned a lot from Gunny Ariano at the time. Great guy, great section leaders. And then yeah, pretty quick. I think we did a Steel Night exercise. I don't know if when you were in Steel Night was still going on.
Yep.
So yeah, I got to go spend several months out in 29 Palms in the winter for Steel Night, which was my first chance to like lift a unit. Right, it was 2-4 that we lifted. I'll never forget. Colonel Vivian was the battalion commander, and that was just yeah, got to do my job, which was super rad. And then came back, and it was like very quickly. It was like, all right, hey, you're going to be the AV platoon commander for the LF deployment. And so at that point, it's like, sweet. Now I'm going to go train to go do some real work.
Nice. With that, whole process of, becoming the platoon commander and then getting slated to go on that deployment that you guys were getting, what's something that you saw along the way, whether it be in your, senior enlisted leadership or your junior enlisted leadership, like a display that you saw your Marines really clicked and everything kind of came together?
I think it's a tough question to answer because as a platoon commander, I don't think you ever accept. I think if you're a savvy platoon commander, you never accept the fact that everything's just clicking and working perfectly. You're always trying to find a way to make the guys better, make yourself better, make your platoon fight better. Like I think maybe at the section level, it's like, hey, we get it. Like, or even the crew level, like as a crewman, and with an LAV, like there is a point in time where that crew just clicks, right? And your comms are great, and your pre, your pre-checks on your vehicle, your at-halt checks are perfect. You get into a herringbone perfectly. Um, but I think at the platoon level and up, there's always something you can do better. So I don't know if I can answer that question to the level
Yeah, and I
you're
mean,
asking.
I guess, like let's take Steel Knight for example. Was there an
Yeah,
exercise that you guys did, and you just, you kind of like, the little things and setting up in herringbone, or the crews working together, and maybe like doing that, setting up that support by fire and the grunts.
yeah.
It's like, all of those things. I would assume that it's just an all-encompassing thing of being able to witness from a leadership position on how the things that you're relaying are, coming to play, and you're getting to watch that happen in front of you.
I will tell you, when things are going well as a platoon commander, when the radio traffic becomes really infrequent, right? Like when you're going to roll into a defensive posture and you need to do like a wagon wheel or something like really basic, and archaic now. Um, and you're like, hey, you put the command over the net and it's one command and the lead vehicle knows where to go and everyone just falls into place. So I would say as a young platoon commander or a squad leader or section leader, you can tell when you're effective when you're off that radio. The least amount of comms is that's when those implied tasks are happening.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that goes to say, like, like obviously nobody wants the net, clogged up with, where do we go? And then, like, because in a real life situation, like let's say there's an IED strike, or, like you're getting ambushed. If people are clogging the net and not able to like know where they're supposed to be by, like that repetition and training, then that kind of screws everything else over when you're trying to direct fire, give address, and, coordinate effectively when people are trying to still figure out where they're supposed to go or be oriented. So that's a great point. So you guys are getting ready for this deployment, or you've already been on the workup for this deployment. What did you guys going to Mew?
No, so then the MEU is like the best deployment you can get as a Navy platoon commander. When I got to Alpha Company, the MEU rotation for who was going to go on the MEU, who was going to be part of CAB like you were, and then who was going to get the landing force cooperation and training deployment. That was kind of all in flux. So I got there before that decision was already made. I couldn't influence that one way or the other. Timing, as most folks will learn, they're like, hey, I want to go do, I want to go do grunt shit. I want to go put myself in the best position possible to get a deployment. And it's like, hey, at the end of the day, like you don't get a vote in any of that stuff. And I didn't get to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, man, and I it kills me. I really wish I could have. And I could put my hand up in the air, as many times as I wanted to, but that was not the amphibious assault mission at that moment. 2 years prior, 100%.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and timing is everything. And I even talked to my youngest son that's 15, and he's like, oh, I want to go do this and do that. And it's like, I know you want to, but you can't. And I can be hard on myself and go, I should have done this, to position myself better. I should have gone infantry. I could have had better, opportunity to get into, to go to Afghanistan and run out of patrol bases. But the reality is, like, you don't get a choice when those
Right.
things come up. But our battalion commander at the time, Colonel Crane, he was very specific. Like, if you got a water ops mission where there's a MEU or a mission like I got, Elif Karat, you were handpicked, and it was like, I think, because you're going to represent him,
Right.
in the community. And I think I know all of us take that very, very seriously. So, um, yeah, and I'll kind of take a step back. So that platoon that I initially got is not who I went with on Elif Karat. So landing force cooperation training in 2010, 2011 is a combined force of reservists and active duty. And, if I could go back and say, like, that was probably the best thing I could have done, by some you or anything else, because I'm a reservist now.
Right.
So then I was an active duty guy and going, okay, sweet. Like, 3/4 of my platoon are reservists. Um, and I remember I was assigned, my platoon sergeant Gunny, who was an active duty guy, great guy, Dennis Lynn. And we just kind of were nervously going, okay, getting to meet our platoon for the first
Right.
time. And they came out from Tampa and all the other training sites at the time. And everyone linked up and we met everybody on the ramp at Third Tracks. And it was like, okay, cool. This is a full, table of organization, table E, TOTE platoon. I mean, 62 dudes, and 14 vehicles. And, that was our time to shine. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah, that sounds like you get that. It's funny how things kind of fall into place to where they set you up for success or already having the experience in the future. You know, I'm just reiterating the what you had already said in the sense you're working with these reservists and seeing what kind of environment they're coming from, and you ultimately end up in, a similar
Yeah.
position a couple of years down the road. And on the note of, I know like there's so many Marines out there. Like, I was like with Third LAR, so I was in 29 Palms. I was an infantry
Yep.
rifleman. I was not a crewman, thank God.
Okay.
But I was fortunate enough to get to go on 3 deployments, two of those being combat deployments. And, I never had to attempt to raise my hand or ask to be, I was just put there, in the same sense of you may want this. I actually, on my third deployment, when we went to Okinawa, I tried to go back to Afghanistan with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. Um, I wanted to get the fuck out of LAR, but didn't work out that way. I wanted something. It's not like that. I went where the Marine Corps needed me and where they told me that I needed to go. So, you don't really have a say. I've talked to a few other Marines that, um, it did not get the opportunity to deploy to go to
Yep.
combat, right? And obviously, as being a Marine, regardless of your MOS, or I would say 99%, maybe whatever, there's certain MOSs they want nothing to fucking do with holding a rifle or engaging the enemy combatants. Um, it's like everybody wants to do that. And, if you don't get to, it doesn't negate the service that you did or the things that you're
That's right.
still doing. Um, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I'm not trying to make this about me, but I always say this. Like I had a chip on my shoulder for a long time, being a young infantry squad leader, being a combat veteran, thinking that I knew everything, and completely brushing off people that weren't on my level, right? I thought I was too salty from my own boots. Um, like I was like, fuck these guys, like I know everything, and that's not the case. I was very, um, I was an asshole, for no reason, thinking
Yeah.
that I was
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
than other people, and it's taken me a long time to, get over that hurdle. And not that it's like, oh wow, good for you, like congratulations, you're not a fucking asshole anymore. Like I definitely still am an asshole, just in a different way. But we so hard, throughout the GWAT, you look at it like, man, look at this fucking guy. Like he didn't go on a deployment dodger. And it's like, well, yeah, he probably would have been, could have been a better Marine than you doing your job. It's just that this is where he is right now. And I was talking with
Yeah.
Major Victor Garcia last night, 29 years in the Marine Corps, the whole time infantry, deployed with 24152535. So every unit that you can be with 5th Marines. And I was like, man, I wish I would have done this and this. And he's like, Mike, you're at where you're at right now because of the path that you took. Like don't regret the decisions that you've
Yeah.
made and the path that you're on now, thinking that you wanted to do something else. Like you wouldn't be here doing this right now if you had gone and done X, Y, and Z. Wouldn't have the family that I do, wouldn't have the relationships that I do. It all happens for a reason. And that's a part of why I wanted to do this podcast, is because I want to bridge the gap between the misunderstandings between different MOSs, different branches of service, people that did and did not deploy, show that there are plenty of similarities that we all have in common, and we can still support each other and be, like brothers in arms, sisters in arms, friends, like supporting the veteran community and standing behind our current service members that are following in our
Yep.
footsteps. So, just to hit on that real quick, it's like I think that that's an important thing, especially with the new generation of Marines and like that end of GWAT era
Yeah.
where guys were like, they joined to go to combat or they joined to do this and they were unable to do that. And it does not, just because you didn't, does not mean you're any less of a United States
Yep.
Marine.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to speak at SHOT Show this last year, specifically about hiring veterans. And when we look at hiring veterans at my civilian company, I put them in categories, right? There's the GWAT guys, our generation, and some of us got to go and some of us didn't. And then there's the generation after us that, got to do some stability stuff, maybe UDP. And then there's the generation that's kind of now, and it's exactly how I describe it, is like you might have some guys that leave their active service with a bit of regret, and I think it's our job on a civilian sector, not just veterans, not just guys like you and me, but everyone to go, no, 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 like remind them like it's not, you did your part. You wrote your name on a check that had, pay up to the balance of your life, and you didn't get a choice whether you got to go or not. And I think you had Mason Rodriguez on your podcast earlier, didn't you?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, Mason's a good friend of mine, and him and I've talked about this in great length because we kind of feel the same way. Like, we really didn't get that shot. There's some regret, and he has a poem in his book, Rock Eater, that actually goes into that, and it's like, dude, this speaks to me. So,
Well, I
um,
actually, funny that you say that. I was gonna I have that right here, and you can see that there's no holes in it. Um, I was gonna wait until offline, but it's funny you brought it up. I was gonna say I've got some family in Arizona, maybe come down and knock on your door and be able to rip this thing
let's do
apart
it.
with a 240. So I think that and I love because that's another thing that him and I talked about, about this mindset of the GWAT, and it doesn't negate it at all, like it doesn't just because like, oh yeah, they did deploy and like, yeah, maybe you walk around carrying a big stick, but there's also those guys that did get to do it, right? And they completely tarnish and ruin the
Yeah,
embodiment of what it is to be a combat veteran or be a war fighter, you know. I trust me, I'm not the most seasoned salty combat veteran. Yes, we killed the Taliban. My friends were blown up. Like whatever it may be, you know, there's always somebody that's going to be fucking more experience than
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
have, Um, so it's you do this back to where we kind of I ran off on a little tangent there. Um, you're training, you're a part of this. What's the terminology or the acronym that you use for the
Yeah, it's called the Landing Force Cooperation Afloat and Training. So it's essentially like the backup to the MEU that's in that region. And so the MEU kind of goes off at that time, and then LF goes out. So we're on the same ship, ironically enough, and we're on the same exact vehicles. But you're there to do like you have specific objectives you got to hit on this deployment. So we ended up touching 5 different countries with AVs, and we had 2 real world contingency operations that we got to be involved in. One was the whole platoon, and one was just part of the platoon. I can't really go into specifics about like where we were on the second one, but when we got to actually do our job on that first contingency operation, I mean, we all got hazard pay. We all got, we were in a hazardous environment where we were at and what we were doing. Um, and so, I can say like, hey, that was, that was really cool. We got to do our job, and wanted to make sure my Marines at that time felt that sense of accomplishment because it was like what we did made a difference. And, the platoon was just kick ass and awesome. And what I love to talk about is like melding both the active duty and reserve component. When they showed up, and I said 3/4 of the platoon was they were reservists, and so my active duty guys, including myself, you have a little chip on your shoulder, like, oh, okay, this is the reservists, like they don't do it every day, and you learn really quickly that the reservists bring this really unique aspect to the fight, whereas Mike joined at 17, went to MCRD, his life experience was 17 years, right? And you didn't have a civilian job after 17, you were a Marine, right? So I learned really quickly is I had police officers, I had plumbers, I had electricians, I had guys that could do just the most bizarre stuff that you can't make it up. Platoon full of a huge breadth and wealth of knowledge. Um, Literally one of my best friends in the world was a staff sergeant at deployment. And I got to be his retiring officer this last year, and it kills me that he's retired now. But Mac was a guy that like worked with little kids and troubled youth. That's what his civilian job was. So imagine that guy who's like 6'7", this giant human being, very loud individual, as one of your section leaders. I mean, and you've got active duty and reservists, and he honed in on guys that were they had some difficulties they were trying to process in their life, and so to have a platoon that's like they have a shared mission, number one, but just that unique experience that reservists brought to the table for that deployment was just you don't get that with a full active duty platoon. You don't.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good, excuse me, every point that you've hit on or things that you've brought up so far, it's like a an alter and like an eye, well, like, oh, it's so eye-opening. But to come from, on active duty infantry and just having that one very narrow view of what the Marine Corps is, right? And now you're like explaining that like coupling all these guys in and all these things that you're able to do, and the knowledge that comes from that and the experience that comes from that. It's like there is more out there. There is other things that are capable of being done, and it's not just like you guys are in support of everybody always says like everyone's in support of the infantry, which Motor T gets around and does their own thing, at artillery. Everybody does support the infantry ultimately at
Yep,
the end of
they
the
do.
day.
Yep,
Um,
yep,
but it's like you being able to see that like a different point of view and then take that and realize it at the time. Like you're getting this hodgepodge group of guys that come in, and you're able to diagnose the situation and what's going on. You get this staff sergeant that's able to that works with troubled the whole encompassing thing of it, and how you're able to, I guess, delegate responsibility, and then be able to have somebody that's can handle the wild lance corporals and PFCs that are running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Um, it's an alternate perspective of leadership that I think can people can take away points of view from that. So thank you again for sharing that.
for sure, for sure.
So what is the highlight for you from that deployment that you guys went on, other than the operations or the things, the sustainment operations that you guys are
Yeah.
doing in those countries?
I think the highlight for me wasn't the actual deployment. It was part of our workups that we did with the platoon. Um, I wrote like I actually spent a lot of time and I wrote. I wanted to write down my thoughts and feelings on what happened, but you can find it on my Instagram page. I did like a series. I posted, I don't know, like 8 or 9 different, like basically like step one, two, three. This is what happened, but I'll summarize as quick as I can. But basically, we had been doing the crawl rock one method with the platoon, the integrated platoon now, and our the infantry that we were attached with, and so we had done jetty ops, we had done really basic water ops, and we had the opportunity. There was a ship that was going to be on station off of Red Beach, which is right there at Camp Pendleton, and those opportunities are really rare. Like, hey, the ship needs to do what they call a well deck qual, which means they need to get AAVs in the back of the well deck and launch them and recover them and control them. And so when you're working up for this kind of a deployment, it was, hey, this is a primo opportunity to get the platoon to that level. So we were training to that objective. And at the time, the amphibious assault course was going on, and they generally like to hop on these things too, so that the new lieutenants can learn and get some experience. And so when a ship becomes available, everybody wants to be involved because it's so it's a great opportunity. You don't get to do it a whole lot, and so we picked up. Remember, we had we'd probably been in the field a week at that point, and we went back to the 21 area and we picked up the AO course in a couple of our vehicles. And this is all pre-dawn, all super early. And we're talking to the ship. I've got like my shore party. They're talking to the ship, and they're on station. They're anchored out. I don't know, maybe 10 clicks or something. Maybe not quite that far. Maybe like 5 or 6 clicks. You can't see them. It's super early. We wait till there's light, and we splash all of our vehicles out. All 14 of our vehicles, um, including the recovery vehicle, which is the big, lazy, slow vehicle. And we swim out to the ship, and we get on the ship. And the second we get on the ship, literally, I mean, I'm getting off of the vehicle, and I hear, hey, Lieutenant Campbell, come to the wardroom, which I was going to head to anyways. So it's kind of generally what you do. You get your vehicles on the ship, you go to the wardroom and get a debrief from the staff and the ship's captain. And as I'm going up, the OPSO for the ship, is like walking with me, showing me where to go. Because if you've been on a ship, you get lost pretty easy. So it's telling me, hey, our ship is dead in the water. We can't move. And the captain's gonna kind of run through some options with you on what we can do to get you guys off the ship. And so I get up to the wardroom, and they're kind of explaining this to me. And this is my first time being on and off a ship as the platoon commander, right? And they're going, yeah, so we'll be back in port. Maybe if we get the ship running, in a couple of days, and we can, possibly, can you talk to your parent command and talk about, TTing, lowballing your vehicles back to third tracks. And I have a very limited amount of time to train my reservist Marines because, you only have so much time together before you go on your deployment. There's different orders processes for them than there was for the activity guys at the time. And so I knew when I was going to make that phone call to third tracks, like they were going to tell me that's not an option. Um, and I did, made the phone call. And of course, it was not an option. And like, okay, you just got to wait it out. Hopefully, they can get their ship to a point where they can ballast down enough to let you splash off. And, we were there pretty early in the morning. And I had all the AO officers, probably 10 of them, their instructors, and my platoon who had never done a night splash and never splashed on and off a ship. Like we had zero intention of doing a night splash that day. We were not there yet. And yeah, it was like, waiting in the well deck. It's, red lights and it's getting dark and I'm going, man, this is a terrible situation. My gunny and I were on the well deck just going, we can't do this. This is dangerous. This is stupid. But we really had no other option. It was, probably waste the entire rest of our training to get those, vehicles and Marines back to Camp Pendleton or splash at night. And thankfully, I had some top coverage because the instructor for the schoolhouse was there, and he was my instructor in the previous class. I remember going to Captain Driscoll, and I was like, I said, I don't feel good about this. This is the most dangerous thing that we can do as trackers. And he said, no, he goes, you got to do it. He goes, you guys are ready. I watched them all day. Like you guys can do it. And so I kind of had that top coverage, and that made me feel a little bit better about the decision, but still absolutely terrified. And so I remember when you're in the well deck in an AAV, and it's all buttoned up. So every vehicle is closed, hatched, and there's the red lights are on inside the well deck. And my platoon sergeant and I like literally check every single vehicle from front to back, 14 vehicles, every hatch, everything's locked. There's no entries in. And at the back of the formation where his vehicle's at, and like guns, like I'm scared shitless. And he's like, I am too, sir. Like, but we're gonna make it.
Yeah.
And probably one of the most just terrifying moments of your life. You're about to splash 27-ton vehicle with guys that you've never done anything with in pitch dark. And so I remember he got in his vehicle, and that was my time, like walking back, to the front of the column. The platoon commander is always in the fourth vehicle. That's in formation, and so here I was, like walking back to that vehicle, like completely alone. Everybody's buttoned up, and that was like probably one of the most eerie feelings of like, okay, this is it. Get in your vehicle, lock your hatch, get on the comms, talk to the ship. Hey, we're ready to go. And finally, we get green well and we can splash. And just getting everybody on the beach. I just remember we hit the beach. It was a super uneventful splash. Before I could even get out of my vehicle, my gunny was running towards my hog, just just ecstatic.
Yes.
We did it. We made a touchdown.
Yeah, hell
Touchdown.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I would say like of all the things we did, more stressful, more dangerous, and whatever happened, that to me was that defining moment. Like, I don't have all the answers. It's not perfect. We're going to do it anyways. SOPs have changed, and we would never do that today. I tell you that.
Right. Well,
And then that, yeah.
sorry, I was just gonna say, and with, I think everybody knows that there's been some incidents, what was it, 2 years ago that had happened and the AAV went
Mhm.
down. It's like it's a I don't want to call it a game, but it's a dangerous job.
It's a
I've
dangerous
personally,
job.
yeah, I've never been buttoned up in an AAV before, but my friends that have, it is not a place that I want to be. That is for sure. So like sometimes I guess you just got to jump off the deep end, into the deep end. And it seems like you guys did that. And luckily with, the training and the gear and the vehicles that you guys had, you made it to shore.
We did, yeah. And I would say like, hey, man, it wasn't luck. Like because I think if it was, then that would have been a bad call. And I'm not like telling you said the wrong word there at all. I just wanted to clarify, like there was top coverage there to go, no, this is the right decision. And at that time it was the right decision for lots of good reasons. But yeah, when Staff Sergeant Mac is like screaming touchdown because he's the first vehicle to hit the beach, like, all right, we're
Yeah.
good.
That's awesome. So I assume the successful deployment, you guys get back home. What is that initial feeling like? You've been away from your family for 6, 7 months,
Yeah,
on ship, tight quarters. Things are, like you've experienced a little bit of like getting your feet wet in terms of getting out there and doing the job that you had signed up to do. How does it feel when you come home and you get to like see the kids, embrace your wife, like you touch back down American soil, you're home.
yeah. Yeah, so I left, and my youngest child was like, I don't know, a month old. So when I left, so I came home, and my son came. We have a picture, of your little coming home party or whatever, and he is in my wife's arms, and I'm like have my arm around her, and my other son is in the front of us, and it's that happy moment, and he's looking at me,
Like,
and
who the hell
he's
is
like,
this?
"Who are you, and why are you touching my mom?"
Yes, yeah.
And it's one of my favorite pictures, right? Because he was like, I don't know you. He didn't know me. There was no possible way. And didn't have like that, oh, broke my heart moment. Like, nah, I didn't have that. Like, I there's a reality, and I think
Yes.
we all kind of know what it is. But and it didn't take very long. It took a couple of weeks, and it was my little boy. It was great. But yeah, that was super rad to come back, and yeah, I mean, we all know what that experience is like, and I don't know if I can. I haven't dwelt. I haven't had a lot of like recent thought on that, so I don't know. You ask me that in a couple months, I can think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so you get back from the deployment, then you're integrated back into life with the fam, and doing your duties. You've done your duty as a platoon commander. What is that next step for you then?
yeah. So from there, you're right into a company XO billet, and my company was currently in Okinawa, because they were that was the element that was for deploy at that point in time. So I kind of had like all the cats and dogs kind of keep the lights on until the company came home. Company came home. Company commander switched out. New company commander, great guy, Todd Forsman. And at that point in time, the I got my second deployment came up, and it was an IA billet, and it was super cheesy, like kind of like the dream, like you you're not going into harm's way. You're not. I mean, I honestly didn't want to do it. I had my hand up in the air for an Afghan deployment for an IA to do that, and there was none. And so when my boss, Colonel Hall, came with me at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Howard Hall, he's like, this is a perfect mission for you. It's like you're going to basically work for the Secretary of Defense, or I'm sorry, Secretary of State, directly through the State Department, and it was Secretary Clinton at the time, and he's like, you're gonna go kiss babies and shake hands and reintroduce the Marines to the New Zealand, country of New Zealand, because you can go back on the history, but the U.S. had not had uniformed soldiers or sailors or anyone on New Zealand soil since the 1980s. There was a dispute. We had the U.S. had brought in a naval ship, and we wouldn't disclose whether it had nuclear weapons or not. So the New Zealand's created a policy that the U.S. Could not be there physically. And at that time, Secretary Clinton was trying to open that back up, and so we were essentially like we had to think we had 30 dudes that went with us. Great group of guys, like all different MOSs, not just aim trackers, that went and basically reintroduced the Marine Corps to the Kiwis, and we did these joint exercises. I mean, Force Recon guys, I had corpsmen, I had MPs, infantry guys, and, just had a killer time, like just circumventing the entire North Island of New Zealand. And I have a really funny story. I've told this a couple times, but uh, we were there during their Anzac Day, which is essentially like our Memorial Day,
Right. Hmm.
and it's a huge deal for their country. And I have a little bit of jealousy because they literally shut their country down for Anzac Day. And you go to your assigned, I can't remember the name of it. It's like an RSP. It's like your reserve support center. Like essentially like our, I don't know, like a nicer VFW. Think of it like a really nice VFW.
Okay.
And so because I was there and I was the dead OIC, I got to go to like, I don't know, 12 of them during that morning and afternoon and evening, and got to give a little speech and, thank them for having us there, because we were, they hadn't seen Marines there in a long time.
Right.
And I remember I was at this one kind of mid morning, and they hand you a pint of beer and you're going to drink it because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing my and that's some Marines do too. And it's like 10 in the morning. I've got to give like 10 more speeches that day. And I'm like, all right, well, this is what we're doing. And get handed a beer, and I'm wearing my alphas, my service alphas. And this little old lady comes up to me and kind of grabs my blouse and like brings me over to her, and she's like, "I want to introduce you to my husband." I'm like, "Oh, nice to meet you, sir." And he's in a wheelchair. I mean, they're quite elderly, like probably in their 80s. And she goes, "I haven't seen this uniform since World War II."
Oh,
And goes on to tell me, and I lost my virginity to a Marine. And just going on, and she goes, "Yeah, and Earl here didn't even know that." And it was
oh
like
my.
that moment we're just like, damn it, like I love being a Marine so much.
Yes, that is
Just that
awesome.
moment. And you go back and watch like the Pacific series, and
When they're in Australia,
I was with, yeah, and I was with First Marine Division, for my whole active duty time. So
Yeah,
that whole patch being emboldened, and they wore it on their service office. And when I decided to get my sleeve done, I'm like, I'm 100%. I want to own that tradition with
definitely.
those guys.
And
To
that's I
so
like how you brought up like that how they had the patch on their server. I that should be brought back to the Marine
I
Corps.
agree.
I think that just looks so fresh, dude. I really do think that like the Army has I think well I guess not the Navy, but like there. And I don't know. I really don't really know anybody in the Air Force, to be honest with you. But like the Army has their patches signifying, or like even when they're in
Hmm.
their dress uniforms, they have signifying things to show what brigade or whatever unit that you're
Yeah.
with, in the Marine Corps. I think that I mean the only thing is the French Fourrets, like Fifth and Sixth Marines
Right.
having
Yep.
that. That's
Yep.
really the only other signifying thing that you would ever see on any Marines uniform, regardless of, I mean, maybe a security forces thing or MARSOC or EOD or jump wings, dive
Yep.
bubbles. But that's really all that difference you see. So maybe you can like lead the way, Major Campbell out here, like give us our signifiers on our uniforms.
Bring our
Oh,
unit patches. Yeah,
yes.
division patches. Bring the division patches back. I'm 100% on
Yeah.
board. I would
It
love that.
looks
And
looks
what's cool too? It's like we're small, so how many divisions do we have? Like it's
yeah.
not that many, dude. Like
Yes.
it's like make it as small, and yeah, I think it would be super rad. I'm all about it.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode, or well, a continued episode of the Pressing Forward podcast with Major Nishan Campbell. He was fulfilling his duties as a reserve officer in the Marine Corps still. So he had to depart friendly lines pretty quickly last time. So we're reconnecting now and we're starting off from where we left off. So Nishan, thank you again for your time, and I'm grateful to have you back.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me back, man. And I apologize. We got a little overwhelmed there the drill weekend trying to get some stuff that had come down the pipe from division, and had a lot of fun. But yeah, ended up sucking up more time than I was hoping it was going to. So thanks for having me back on.
Of course, I'm glad that we get to continue this conversation, and it kind of just shows that, we come to these points in life, you're trying to get something done, and as basic or as minute that you and I chatting on a podcast may be, but there's other things that come up. You got to take a break, maybe shift fire and shift your focus to something else. And guess what? We can reconvene, and there's no hard feelings whatsoever, and we're still getting it accomplished. So I'm glad to have you back. And do you remember where we kind of left off last time?
Yeah, I think we were starting to kind of, you and I were both getting on our high horses about division patches, and how and obviously I still wear the uniform, but man, I'm with you. Like bring back the division patches.
Yeah.
I have the First Marine Division blue diamond tattooed on my forearm. Like love it. Love if you watch or obviously if you read with the old breed or How Much for My Pillow, and then the mini series
Yeah,
that was on HBO.
yep, Eugene Sledge and Robert Leckie, they're
Yeah,
great
just
dudes.
savages.
I have
Yeah.
both of those books. I actually um went this is recently I've been looking for a first edition copy of With the Old Breed, and I found one. There's one that's like $530 for a first edition.
Holy cow!
But I did not buy that. I did not, but I did pay. It was like a one that was a little more beat up, but still a hardcover. The original, it was like 57 bucks. But I like collecting things like that. Because it's cool. I think that's a part of legacy and tradition, and like
For
keeping
sure.
that heritage. and those stories alive. The sacrifices that were made by those men is just unbelievable. And carrying that, First Marine Division insignia on your part of your tattooed on your body. I think every Marine is. That's regardless of your first, second, third, fourth Marine Division, are pretty proud, and they like to wear that on their chest. So why not bring it back and
Put it on
slap
our
it on there, put it
alphas.
on the
Yeah.
alphas? And a quick question too, I kind of want to ask you, being a field grade officer and having a sleeve tattoo, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here in like a maybe it's perceived as you don't really see a lot of your officers tatted up like that. Do you think that there's any, not animosity, but like do you get some looks from other guys when you may go in sleeves up season, like, like there are things that people say, or was it something that they may have said it was like, oh, Major Campbell or Captain Campbell, why'd you get the sleeve tattoo?
Um, I think so. When the MAR admin came out that said we could get, basically a tattoo anywhere but your, neck, face, hands, and feet. Um, and that was, at a different time. I think, and this wasn't that long ago, probably less than, it was about 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago, because it was shortly after we had finally pulled out of Afghanistan. I should say finally, but when we did pull out of Afghanistan in finality. Um, and I've wanted a sleeve tattoo since I was young lieutenant on active duty, and just, all my gunnies had them, and it was just, it was the thing. And but yeah, so I remember calling the boss, the guy I worked for at the time, Lieutenant Colonel, really, really good guy. And I was like, hey, sir, like, and he was prior enlisted. It's like, hey, sir, I'm thinking about scheduling my appointment for my sleeve. Do you think this is going to be detrimental for the Lieutenant Colonel board? Um, and he's like, no, man, go get it in. Like, get it in before they change it. So I was like, okay, cool. My next higher level was obviously all about it. And I can only say that there was probably one situation where I had, ironically enough, another O5. I won't say his name, but was very condescending. Like when I showed up and was sleeves up, and
Yeah. What are you,
it was
some
like,
daggone Lance Corporal over here? What are you?
right. It's like, well, yeah, I'd probably identify more with the Lance Corporal network than I do the field grade officer network, just being honest. But it's not been bad. I mean, I think on social media, I've got a little bit of a following on all the platforms. I think that was probably the biggest. Like, holy shit, a field grade officer with a full sleeve. Like, I don't think I was the first to do it, but probably one of the first to do it.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, I can't believe they're letting that in the Marine Corps. And some of the older guys, maybe Desert Storm, were pretty, like, taken back the fact that the field grade officer would have a tattoo that was visible. And it's like, well, no, the orders changed, no big deal. But very few people, I would say less than a dozen, and all the interactions I've had that were negative.
That's, and it's to each their own, it's one of those things where you really look at it, and I'll just end it here with, but whatever ink you're gonna put on your body, and like Marine Corps should stay sleeves down year round. Just saying that as well. I
Oh,
do think
boo,
I think
boo.
sleeves down year round, dude. Just fucking but that being said, sleeves do look good. I mean, if you got like a solid PFC coming out of boot camp and he's got those tight rolled sleeves,
Yeah.
I was a gunny roll type of guy because I was too salty for my own good, so I had my sleeves a little loose and lower than they should have been. Um, but what does that have to do with professionalism? Like in
Nothing.
terms of the way that you can be as a
Yeah.
leader, what does
No.
tattoos on your body have anything to do with the way that you conduct yourself as a man, as a leader? Um, and whatever, everybody has their own. I you get where I'm going with that, but
Absolutely.
it should not prevent your capabilities on the field or in a classroom or in the office because you got some ink on your skin. That's your own decision to do. It's whatever. But when we were talking last as well, we kind of left off on New Zealand. Where was this at in your Marine Corps career? Like if you could give me a time frame. Was this you'd already been in what, like 4 years at this point?
Yeah, I was coming right up on 4 years. This was kind of towards. I probably only had a year left on my contract. I had extended. to do this little. I mean, it was technically deployment, but it wasn't like it was just a really cool opportunity. So it would have been 20. It would have been early 2012. Yeah, I think it was early 2012 when we left, like January, February timeframe. Because it was their summer there, which was cool because we had, I'm a surfer, and my senior enlisted advisor when I was a mass sergeant, and he was my surfing buddy, and so we were so stoked to go from surfing, the freezing Pacific Ocean, in January, February, outside of Camp Pendleton, to go to New Zealand in the summer, right? It's their summer, but you're still surfing the Pacific, and it was just warm and beautiful and great.
That's awesome.
So
I've heard
yeah.
nothing but great things. I had a friend of mine that he studied abroad and he lived in New Zealand for like I think it was a little long, like 9 months or something. But he's a snowboarder, skateboarder, surfer dude, and he just said the best spot I've ever surfed is in New Zealand, hands down by far. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I just noticed this. I don't have my little light
Get
on
your key light on, man.
so you can see my
Look
beautiful
good.
face, and I'm not
Yeah,
there we go.
get your
Um
key light on. I didn't bust mine out. I was like, I'm gonna. I think I'll be whitewashed in my room. I'll wash it out, so I
No,
can do it.
you got ample lighting. You got the ambient lighting that comes in. I'm in like my basement right now. That's like where my
Oh,
little
okay.
studio area is, so the lighting's not the best over here. Um, so at this point in time, you've got to make a decision. Have you already made, you said you extended, so you're thinking about either getting out or re-enlisting at this point.
Yeah, so I'm on this like super cool, like, I don't know. I think we were there for 3 months. Um, just little. I mean, and again, we had a small group. I think it was like 35 dudes, all great dudes, and got to go around the island. Did we talk about what we did in New Zealand?
No, well, you explained what you guys did for Anzac Day, but you
Okay.
didn't,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you were kind of like building relationships with like reintegrating the Americans into the,
Yeah.
porting with New Zealand, right?
Totally. And ironically enough, I was at my Page range yesterday, which we have tons of tourists at. And I was talking to an older gentleman, and he was clearly from New Zealand. And I'm like, oh, which island were you on? And he's like, oh, I spent most of my time in North Island. I'm like, cool. Hey, I was at Wellington, at this time frame. And he's like, were you a Marine? And I was like, yeah. And he knew, like, he had like gotten out, like, I don't know, he was quite a bit older than me. He got out maybe 10 years prior to, but he's like, you were the first boys on the island since 1985, and now
That's
now you guys are all over the island. So it's kind of funny, come full circle to see that. But yeah,
definitely.
so I was in New Zealand going, well, my boss had called me that time, Colonel Howard Hall, and he's like, hey, when you get back, I need you to be my OPSO. I'm his first lieutenant, and an OPSO's job is, the senior major in the battalion typically. So between that and the battalion XO are the senior majors. And I was like, oh man, so like not looking forward to that. He's like, yeah, enjoy your time, come back, and I want to talk to you about staying in. But at that point in time, like I knew I wasn't going to stay in. There wasn't really like Colonel Hall was going to sit me down and give me the big sales pitch, and he did, to his credit, like he threw it out there, the whole stay in, and here's the benefits to the Marines, you, your family, and all that good stuff. But like I said, I pretty much missed the formative that first critical year for my second son, and so we were kind of already on that trajectory. So when I came back to Pendleton and was back at Third Tracks, I stepped into the OPSO role, and I went to work, and I was in that job for like 6 months before I EAS'd. So that's going up the division as a first lieutenant, sitting at the table with all the other
Majors in there.
super super
Yeah.
salty majors, and then you've got like the regimental OPSOs or lieutenant colonels, and like why is there a lieutenant at the table, and sit next to the placard. And my boss was super cool. I mean, he went with me like maybe the first time only, and just introduced me to everybody. And the G1 or the G3 was I think he was actually a full bird. And they were super gracious and just let me like jump right into the battle rhythm. And I had no issues with outside commands, right? Like adjacent battalions, regiments, and the division never had a problem. But back at battalion is where I had, I got my shit pushed in pretty regularly by all the salty captains that were the company commanders that were, well senior to me. So yeah, like trial by fire when I got back. But I'll say like in the grand scheme of things, that's where you learn like who the really good leaders are. And Colonel Hall was such a professional, and he's a really good friend of mine today. But I remember one particular individual came up and just screaming at me over just some ridiculous thing. You know, all the company's offices were downstairs, all the battalion staffs were upstairs, and the command deck was, probably halfway down the hallway, and he's just giving it to me. And this was probably the third time he had done it, like in a month. And I saw my master gunny. It's like also you have a master gunny, that's your ops chief. I saw him leave like our main office, and out of the corner of my eye, and this captain was done, chewing me out, and he gets up to leave, and Colonel Hall was standing, right at the end of the hallway, and he's like, "Hey, Captain so and so, why don't you come down here and have a little conversation with me?" And never had an issue with the guy again. And I would have never gone to my boss and been like, "Hey, this is, I can't handle this."
Right.
But that whole senior enlisted, and that was Master Gunny Bishop. He passed away a couple years ago with cancer. But that relationship for me has always been like the key to not just success for me personally, but for the unit as a whole. But I like to say, like, selfishly, whoever that senior enlisted that I had, even aside from all the great officers I've served with, that's always been the critical difference. Whether I was a brand new second lieutenant with my first platoon, all the way up, company command, you've got, a couple of master sergeants and a first sergeant. Those relationships are they're forged in fire, and it's just so critical. And then I was the opposite at Fourth Tracks. My last billet, I had a master gunny that I worked with, and one of just a great friend of mine now today. He's since retired. And then sitting in the battalion XO seat now, I've got a sergeant major that I can walk into his office, pretty regularly, and we talk quite more frequently than I ever thought possible. But man, that relationship to me, like when I talk to young officers now and go, "Hey, yeah, your buddies are cool, and you're all going to kind of progress together at the same time." But the relationships to me that mean the most, man, Gunny Lynn, Gunny Ariano, Master Sergeant McPherson, First Sergeant Taus. I could go on and on. Master Guns Bishop, Master Guns Lockwood. Some really key sergeant majors in my life. Sergeant Major Alvin right now being one of them. Like, man, that's the secret sauce, man. Like
Well,
that relationship.
yeah, and that's a key factor too to like not to say that officers don't plan and then conduct and act and operate on these things, but the bridging the gap between the planning and the execution between your officers and your enlisted, there's that experience and understanding that as like you would say, being a junior lieutenant or maybe, coming into a platoon commander role, these guys have those experiences that they can shift onto you, and you take that advice from them. It just makes things flow 10 times easier. And this is me witnessing that. I haven't partaken in any of these activities in a long time, but seeing that for myself, and I mean, I remember like Master Guns Martinez, Master Guns Bemis. These were guys with 3rd Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion that were just knew the ins and outs of how to conduct things and the correlation, like the connection between the officers planning things in the office, and then you've got these guys that are out there implementing, ensuring that the training schedule, the ranges and the ammo and all the allocated things that's going down to these different levels, those are essential things that need to be bridged together in order to make all of that happen. So,
Yep. Yep.
that's important stuff that, hopefully young leaders will, because you see those platoon commanders and those young officers that come in, and it's like, going to TBS and going to IOC or whatever route that you go with the uh, on the track side and going to the tracks officers course, the ATS, right? Amphibious train or officer
Yeah,
AOS.
AO course, the amphibious
Yeah.
officer course is what it's called
And,
now. Yeah.
doing those things and then coming in and thinking that you could be that guy that's like a Captain Sobel, or you could be a guy that's like,
Yeah.
Dick Winters, and make those things. But this is a question that I want to ask you, because this kind of shifts into now you're getting out, you end up EASing a few months after, this role as the ops chief, or the ops officer. Um, where do those leadership things and those planning and being to sit in on these meetings that you're in there with O5s and O6s, where does that play a role in when you go to start your own business, right? You've got all this experience with being able to oversee these operations, how to plan, how to delegate, how to, set goals and, meet those standards. And obviously now you've got this successful business that, I want to hear the journey on how you've been able to do that because that that's huge, man. That's awesome. Where can you show that those things that you learned in the Marine Corps helped with the successful transition into being able to start a small business?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer, man. It's a, and I would like preface anything that I say going forward with, look, like success is 100% rented. And I didn't coin that phrase. It's all over Instagram, the internet, everywhere, right? Like, but it's, I fully believe that. Success is absolutely rented, and rent, the payment for that rent is due every single day. Before we started recording here, you were telling me you're getting up at 5 a.m. and you're PTing and you're spending some time in meditation, doing some thoughtfulness. I mean, man, that I will tell you, success will ebb and flow with your decision making ability and the opportunities that are presented to you. And that's the fun part about kind of this, the civilian business world is you never really know what's going to happen in the market. Like we had COVID happen and we had to reinvent our entire business during COVID because we're primarily a tourism based entity. But skipping ahead, like success, like you have to earn it every day. And I will tell you, the Marine Corps, regardless of rank, and I love this, everything starts with PT. And there are guys that take this too far. And I'll fully admit that I was probably one of them in the beginning. But if your body is not able to support what your brain is asking it to do, you will not be successful long term. And I'm not fat shaming people, but I will tell you, I've worked in the C suite for several Fortune 500 companies, both before and after the Marine Corps. And the guys that are, morbidly obese, right? They have a BMI high that puts them in a category, so they're morbidly obese. They do not take care of their physical body. They're not progressing. They have a faster burnout rate than those that are taking care of themselves. And it is a health issue that affects not just your physical health, but your mental health and your performance. So when I say earn it every day, for me, it has to start with some sort of PT. I'm not the guy that's going to go run 20 miles. I hate running, just to be honest with you. Like you leave TBS and you go to the fleet and you're taught and told that you need to go run your platoon to the ground, right? And we all do that. And then I think your body starts to morph and change. And I don't enjoy that. It's not my go-to thing. I do run when I have to for PFTs and CFTs, but it's not my go-to thing. But now I go and I give myself anywhere between 20 minutes and an hour, and that's every freaking morning. And in the winter, I'm up earlier because I do this kind of weird thing where I ski up my little ski hill that's here. And it's like a 45-minute hike with skis on in the dark, and it resets my brain. So when I get back home and I hit the shower and I'm cold, or by that time I'm sweating like cold from my drive back to the house, that reset for me starts that whole I'm paying my rent today. And regardless of what high pressure situation I'm walking into that day, or even worse, and I will tell this to guys that are starting small businesses that you hope to become big business someday, you're going to have so many days where it's minutia, and you have to figure out a way to attack that stuff, get a task list together. And the Marine Corps teaches us to prioritize and execute. Prioritize, execute. It's super simple, but boy, it is so easy to fail at that. Even in your current situation where you're like, hey, I'm going to go back to school. I want to get involved in some new things. Boy, can you just churn and churn and churn and churn. And what Master Sergeant McPherson would always call nothingness. Like, are we doing nothingness today? And when I'm having a meeting with, my staff here at Gunfighter, that is a question that I ask almost every single meeting, right? It's like, okay, we're working on X and Y project. Okay, is this actually progressing us towards our goals, or is this nothingness? So, I'm kind of talking in a big circle here, Mike, but at the end of the day, like you've got to start by earning it. And the Marine Corps, what your question was, what did the Marine Corps, how did it prepare me to start a business? And there was, I didn't go straight from the Marine Corps, right, and own my own business.
Okay,
I
I
worked for a
should have.
couple big
Okay, okay.
companies. Yeah, and but again, and prior to the Marine Corps, I worked for CBS Broadcasting. So I did work for a big Fortune 500 company. Then, there's a gap between my college and when I joined the Marine Corps, and that's what I was doing, selling advertising for CBS Broadcasting. But uh, you know, in the medical device sales fields, it's no different, right? Like you still got to get up and you got to earn it every single day. And for me, it starts with PT. Uh, I caught into that dumb trend, and it's not dumb, of doing cold plunges in the morning.
Yep.
I do it every other morning. So I'm a hot in a cold. I do heat therapy and I do cold therapy. And even if I only get 20 minutes of cardio or a 20-minute, weightlifting session at the house, if I can end with one of those two things or start with one of those two things, like if I'm going to lift, I'm going to typically do my cold therapy before. And then if it's a heat day and I get in the sauna, then it's after my workout. But for me, a guy that has, I have elevated blood pressure. So I'm constantly trying to like monitor that, along with just maintaining a certain level of fitness that I want to have for myself personally. I want to be a savage. Like, end of the day, like when I'm 60 years old, Mike, I want you and I to be able to sit down and have a conversation and go, man, you're still getting it in,
Yep.
right? And I want to ask if you're still getting it in. Like, I still want to be dangerous at 60. That's my goal. So I've got a long runway to still make sure that by the time I hit 60, I want to be in better shape than I am now. So
Definitely.
that's my personal driving. Like, going back to your question, like the Marine Corps says, look, you can't lead unless you're fit. Okay, got it, right? You can't lead from the back. All right, well, what's the next step? You got to have the tools. And the Marine Corps says, okay, we're going to send you to sergeant's course, corporal's course, expeditionary warfighting school, command and staff, which I'm finishing this week. Well, last week left of command and staff. Those are prescribed. But in the civilian sector, you go, okay, what is it going to take for me to be successful? Well, for some guys, a college degree makes a ton of sense, because let's say you want to get into, a high level sales position. Well, you're going to need a minimum of a bachelor's degree. Okay, that's one of my tools. Okay, maybe you want to be in the leadership role or in a C-suite level. Well, you need to get your MBA, right? Which I did right out of active duty. Maybe it's to go to law school so you can get that specific trade and go into that. But for some guys starting a business, it's not necessary. I will tell you, and this is what I tell my sons. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, and so they're kind of thinking like, all right, what do I want to do with my life? And this whole mantra of school has gotten so expensive, college has gotten so, is it really worth it? Is my investment in my future going to pay off? I would say, look, even someone that owns their own business, this is my pitch to you, to continue your education and do what you're doing right now. When you need to go sit down with a lending institution because you have a great idea, you've got the work, you got the fire in your belly to execute on that idea. You're going to go to the bank and you need money. Let's say it's not the bank. Let's say, because I've done it both ways. You can go traditional lending, which is the bank, or you can go private money, which is where someone's taking a bet on you. One's
Right.
going to cost you a little bit more. One's going to cost you a little bit more in time. They both have their pros and cons. There's good reasons to do both. And like I said, where I'm at my business, we have 3 locations. We've done both routes. And as we grow and expand, we're going to continue to do what makes sense, at that moment. But I can tell you, if I did not have an MBA and I didn't have experience from the Marine Corps previously in leadership, and I didn't have a track record, right? I didn't have those pieces of paper, those checks in the boxes, and we call them civilian and military. I can tell you, I probably wouldn't have gotten our first business loan if I didn't sit down with the banker and said, "This is who I am. This is what I bring to the table." Yeah, you're making a bet on my business plan, my pro forma, or what I think I can do this, but you don't know. Like, no plan survives the first contact. Like, just like in business, I go back and look at my original business plan that I wrote in 2004, 2015. Our business is vastly different than what it was, and I projected 5 years, to 10 years out. That banker, that person that's making the decision, or that private lender, that your buddy's uncle that happens to have some substantial amount of wealth, they are making a bet on you. And that having those things in your toolbox to say, no, I put the work in here, do my bachelor's, undergrad, your MBA, went to challenge myself to several deployments, had challenging jobs in the Marine Corps. I didn't just skate through, cheese dick Bics, which we all know they exist. You know, yeah, no, I did the work. Now they're betting on you. And so I would say, look, win the day, get right off of the bat. For me, it's PT, and then it's boom, get your toolbox built, and your toolbox is all those things. I've been talking for a little bit. I'll break, and I'm not like quite at the end of what I was going to say with that, but I'll give you a chance
No,
to
keep
ask some
going, dude.
questions there.
This is all good stuff. This and not to stop your role, but this is all things that need to be said in this process and the thought behind, excuse me, and how you're going to make this happen is important. So continue, please.
So you, you win. You start with your physical side, okay, and then you're adding that toolbox to your mental side. Now I think you're getting pretty dangerous. You're missing one component, right, and that's experience, and that's what our staff and COs, right, our senior enlisted, your senior sergeants, your corporals, the guys that have been around a while, like that's what they feed you, right, in the Marine Corps. So now you got to build your team. And if you're a startup, you're a team of one, right? Until you can convince someone to believe in your vision and the mission, which ultimately is what? It's you. So you got to go find those guys. And, I was super lucky. And again, this is the fun part about the civilian world. You never know who's gonna walk into your path. The business partner that I've been with for a long time now, we own a medical device distribution company together as well. But before we started Gunfighter, that's where we were. And he continued to make bets on me, right? And together we kept, spinning this plan up. So my team started with him, right? And then it grew to another one, and then another one. And the next thing you know, we were able to hire an employee. And that was like, wow, okay, this is a huge risk now. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing more humbling than to go, I need to meet payroll, right? Like, hey, the Marine Corps teaches us one thing: you don't mess with people's leave and pay. Some people mess with people's leave. It shouldn't be happening. But we will acknowledge that happens. But generally, the Marine Corps never messes with your pay. And in our business, we've been in business for 6 years now. So we're going into our 7th season. We've never missed a payroll, not once. And I'm super proud of that fact. And there has been some extremely tight situations where, I was extremely worried up until the day that those checks were issued. But that's you're building that team, and we hired veterans. Like the first guy we hired was a staff sergeant in the Army, and did great things for us for a short period of time, but really really good things. And ended up doing some other stuff. I'm back in the Army. He's doing great things today. And then I had an assaultman. That's 03
51.
51. Thank you. Yeah, an 0351 assaultman. And he worked for us for about 3 years. One of my best friends, who was a corporal, got out. I think he was with 2-4. And just those relationships that you're building, right? The Marine Corps teaches you, like, yeah, you can come in and say, hi, I've got rank on my collar. You're going to do what I say. We all know that's not going to work long term, and it's never going to be successful. But those relationships, I mean, we've hired just about every rank, my current rank and lower, in our company, and every single branch is represented at this point, which I'm super proud of. The only branch that's not is the Space Force, but we've got some time for those guys to still get out. We'll snag one eventually. So anyone in the Space Force looking to transition, hit me up in the DMs.
Yeah, once you guys start getting your hands on some laser guns, or like I don't know,
Yep.
like intercontinental, like ICBMs or something, then you could be like, all right, the Space Force, guide these coordinates to our range. If only, right?
We'll bring them in. We'll get them in. So yeah, man, like all those dudes, building that team. And then what I've learned recently, man, that team is always evolving. The Marine Corps teaches us, hey, you're going to PCS every 2 to 3 years anyways. Okay, got it. Do I agree with that 100% of the time? Probably not. Like, I think there's some validity to having some consistency, and also some validity to sitting in a rank a lot longer than I think the Marine Corps tells us to. I learned that working with the New Zealand forces and the British, where they would have a sergeant that's like a 28-year sergeant. Hey, I promise you, that sergeant is the best sergeant ever,
Yeah.
right? Because he reached the ranks probably in less than 10 years. Let's say 8 years he's a sergeant, and he's never, nope, I am the best sergeant, and he probably is like the best sergeant ever. Because you can't beat that experience in time. So those big things, right? Like, build that physical base, build that mental base with your other tools, and then boom, get your team together. And that's what's been so fun to me. And you want to talk about challenging yourself as a leader, man? Like, holy cow! What works one day with one person, and this isn't the military. So the military sets us up for nice. You got a platoon sergeant or a company first sergeant or a battalion sergeant major. And you've got all these subordinate leaders, but it's a business owner, and you're making that up. So there's times where I'm like, all right, I do not know how to fix this problem. And then you just start going back to, well, what did we do in this operation? What did we do at the battalion here? What did we do with the company there? And you apply some stuff and some of it works. You just can't be married to it. And that's the
Yeah.
big thing I would say is like use it as a starting point and then refine, 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 refine. And I think I drive some of my guys crazy, that were like one term Marines, because they see the officer and they kind of come out where I'm like, refine the process, plan, 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 plan. But if you don't do that, but you get stagnant, and I was telling you before, like you got to prioritize every day, every day, every day. I can't stress that. Get your task list together, get your 1 through 10 or 1 through 50 or whatever you believe, right? Get that together and then execute. The moment you're done with that list, execute, 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 because we can have the best plans in the world. And I think our company does have some of the best plans in the world, or I wouldn't be doing what we're doing. And we have some of the best people in the world working with us right now. And it's you have to execute. And so I love challenging my store managers because they've got these great ideas, right? And I'm like, man, I didn't think about that. Sweet. But what have you done to start executing it? And it's like, well, I sent an email. Well, I sent a text message. And it's like, okay, is an email and a text message, is that executing? 9 times out of 10, it's not,
No, it's just
right?
coordinating or communicating, like
That's it. That's it, right? And then you go back to, like, I think I said this a dozen times yesterday when I was at one of my stores talking to the store manager, and I was like, guys, you have to inspect what you expect. Like you expect them to do X, Y, and Z. If you're not inspecting it, I promise you it's not happening. Not because they don't like you, not because they're saying, fuck off, man. I don't care what you say, but it's not important enough for you to inspect. It's not going to be important enough for them to actually do the task.
right. And then
So,
that's when you get like, the guys kind of start getting complacent and not doing their due diligence to continue doing those things. You've got to have that oversight and be able to go through and be like, okay, are you guys following through that list of executions that we have to plan for the
yep,
day? Or are you like, this is kind of mundane, we did that yesterday, so we don't need to maintain maintenance. And then that's where you get to slack off with, you know, ensuring that the functionality of the firearms are working properly, or cleanliness, or that things are
yep,
prepped and staged for, if you got a bachelor party coming in or whatever it may be, that your prior, your proper planning preventing poor performance type of thing. So that being able to instill that and then shifting and changing when you see things that aren't working, that innovation or the kinetic mindset of things, always moving forward and gaining more ground, gaining new territory. That's where I think hearing you talk about those things shows that in order to be successful, it's not just the idea, it's not just thinking about it. You have to enact these plans, you have to stick to, those goals that you establish for yourself, and then utilizing the experience that you already have, right? Like it starts with that ripple effect,
yep,
right? Like you
yep,
toss that first stone into the pond, boom, that's you've got to establish you first. So that's where that mental and the physical things come in, and then you expand on that. So like in order for me to have a successful day at work, or getting schoolwork done, or whatever it may be, like I have to ensure that my family and my within arm's reach is good as well. So me, my family, then I can start to work and focus on, like, whether it be my service to work, school, the veteran community, and you can focus on that larger picture of things. But it all starts with you and how you're implementing those daily routines into your life. And I'm just getting back into this routine and finding the
yep,
discipline in myself to be able to do those things. And I will second the fact that when you start your day off with doing those things, it's pressing you, or it's ensuring that your mindset shift is on this spark of, like, all right, I've got X, Y, and Z done by 7:30 in the morning. Now I can set myself up to go through and start knocking out those tasks that I have set for
yep,
myself. Um, one thing that I've kind of learned too is, like, if you add a little gratitude to your morning when you wake up and you find I'm thankful or I'm grateful for, the socks on my feet to keep my feet warm. As something as simple and as basic as that, you can change your attitude, right? Like you find the gratitude, change your
Yep,
attitude, and shift that mindset to being like, I'm not gonna let the traffic on my way to work today affect me because, it allows me time to listen to the Pressing Forward podcast while I'm on my on my drive into
that's
work,
right.
whatever
That's right.
whatever it may be. So I think that, I'm grateful that you are able to explain that in such a way that it makes sense. If you do these things, it's not gonna all like you're gonna have those hurdles, you're gonna have
Yeah,
road speed bumps along the way, but having that team, then when you get to those things, that's when you can collaborate, that's when you can come together and find those new ways of attacking these problems. And um that it's good to see that you're implementing this. You're allowing the opportunity for these veterans to come in and do something that they're passionate about, be involved. Like I see the stuff that you guys are posting, and it seems like a little family or like a little platoon that you have, and
that's
you
right.
got guys meshed in from all these different branches of service. From what you say, it's like the rank structure that they previously had. um they got to set that rank on their collar aside.
Yep.
And now it's delegation and responsibility in a new aspect. You could have a corporal with one enlistment, but he's really good at ensuring that these things happen. And you got like a lieutenant or a captain he's like, hey, sir, or like, hey, man, John, like today
Yep.
you're you're the one with the broom now or something like that.
That's right.
So you got to understand that that was one of my biggest downfalls after getting out of the Marine Corps. And, I really trying to focus on moving forward and not focusing on the things that I did wrong in the past, but just to bring it up so that other dudes know that like you get to this position where you think that everything should be handed to you or that
Mm.
somebody owes you something, and if you
Oh,
have that mindset of, well, I did this, so I should deserve this, which I am guilty of, right? I'm guilty of, and I was no nothing to write home about. Okay, I did my job. I may have been recognized for doing certain things and participated in X, Y, and Z. Um, but that if you let that define you, you're no different from that dude that's wearing the state championship jacket that doesn't fucking fit him anymore at the 20-year high school reunion, and he's out of shape and he says, "You guys remember that time I threw that touchdown pass senior year state championship?" It's like,
yep.
excellent. What the fuck are you doing now? Like what have you done to move past that? Like it's great. Be proud of your service. Be thankful for the experiences that you had. Be grateful for the relationships that you built. But utilize that as that propelling fucking rocket fuel forward to better yourself after and make something of yourself after you get done. And which you have, man. And I know that there's
But
help
it's
along the
every but I haven't, right? And I want to like stress the fact like it's an ebb and flow. And what I hate to see guys do is look at an individual, particularly on LinkedIn or Instagram, right, and go, that dude is successful. God, I want to, and there becomes an envy or a desire to be like, or what they don't see, man, is every day there are wins and there are losses. And I can't stress that enough, man. We're 6 years, we're in our seventh, going into our seventh season right now on our company, our small company. We've got, about 20 employees, 3 locations, man. We want to expand hard and fast. We can't do it this year. Like it's a huge kick in the butt to me. Like I wanted to be able to expand, to a really big facility where I live in Flagstaff, and we can't do it. Like there's no way we can do it. So I would say, like, look, man, you look at every person that looks like you think defines success. I promise they're getting knocked down
yeah.
10 times more than they are that one. So I appreciate the accolades. I just can't take it because I want you to know, like, man, every day I'm learning something new. Every day I sit down and go, man, I could have done that better. It's the days that you don't do that. Those are the days you lose. Those are the days you go home and you're like, and you don't know it until the couple days later. But when you have that attitude of I'm successful, I'm cocky, I'm sure of myself in all things. But those are the days that you don't win. That they're really not. I like to like tell my guys we celebrate, with gratefulness. It's not an arrogant like, hey, we did it. We accomplished X. We accomplished Y. Like we're so great. Like do it with a little bit of humility. Like man, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to step up to the plate and hit that. I'm not a sports analogy guy or a big sports guy, but it's like that is, man, every day.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I don't want it to make it seem like I'm trying to I don't I understand, like I want to bring awareness to that as well, right? Like
yep, yep,
while this journey is happening for you, and I mean in terms of success and how not just monetary or like the new buildings and everything, but success in the way that you've been able to impact people's lives, right? Whatever it be,
yep,
employing a veteran and giving them an opportunity to do great things, or getting somebody in and like, letting them shoot a belt-fed machine gun for the first time and you see that smile on their face. I mean,
totally.
those different points of success. And on top of that, being able to expand, you're doing some really cool stuff. And also, on top of it too, like, like the knowledge that you have, the experience that you have that goes into that. It's like you have, what am I trying to say? Like a good background for it and a good, like it's not just like some guy coming in off the street and like opening up a gun range and expect you have a way to utilize those skills. So if anybody out there is thinking, man, like I was in the Marine Corps, and not to say that they're going to go out there and get a loan to open up a gun range and,
Yeah, yeah,
get their class 3 weapons license right off the bat, but working towards something like that and finding that, there is going to be hardship along this route. And with hearing you say like these points right here, don't let it get you down. There are going to be wins, there are going to be losses. Those are the type of things that guys and gals need to hear, regardless of the route that they're taking, whether it be starting a business, going back to school, the job that you want to get. There's going to be all those road bumps along the way. There's speed bumps along the way, and you have to figure out how to navigate those and to fall back on daily tasks, setting up a routine, the support systems in your life, and then implementing different practices into your day that remind you there's goals, you have your standards, your principles in life, where you're going to
yep,
use those to propel you forward. It's all impactful stuff that it's so not talked about because everybody wants to focus on only the good things, right? Like you said,
that's
on
right.
social media is really
Yep,
bad with that in the sense of nobody's posting their worst day, or the things that they're really down about, which I think is something that can be more brought to light because it one opens you up to being honest about the way that you're feeling and the things that you're
yep,
going through, which in turn can bring other people into your life or maybe give you an opportunity to or some practices or tools to be able to change those things. And then also being open about the wins, being open about the things that you're grateful for. It
yeah.
lets people see like a different mindset, and you don't have to focus on all the negativity and the BS news and the world craziness that's going on out there. Start with yourself, get your family stuff in order, impact your community, and then give and provide that service and give back. So, you've had a heck of a journey up to this point. I mean, with, I didn't even get into your going back to school after you got out of the Marine Corps. You're obviously in the reserves right now. You're still implementing these, traditions, upholding these traditions, these standards, and the mindset that you're able to give on to your Marines. Is there any impactful or important things that you can think of, um, with your time in service right now as a leader and being a reservist field grade officer? What are some of the things that you're able to implement into the guys that you have, whether it be instilling training, mindset, or participating in the community because you guys are, reserve unit? Is there anything that you can hit on?
Sure. So I think so for all the officers on my staff, um, both when I was a company commander and now as battalion XO, they all get a copy of Jocko Willnick's book, Extreme Ownership. And if you haven't read it, have you read it?
I have it.
Um, everyone on my staff, a gunfighter, everyone in a leadership position has a copy of that book. Um, it's not the Bible. It's not, the Quran. It's not the end all be all. But what I love about putting that book in the hands of new leaders or leaders that have been doing it for a while, everyone kind of rolls their eyes initially and go, I know what extreme ownership is. Because I said the same thing, right? Like, I get the concept, dude. I've led people. I,
Yeah.
I understand what it's like. But when I actually sunk my teeth in that book for the first time, probably 6 years ago, not that long ago, the book's been out a long time.
Yeah.
Um, what really resonated with me was the ability for Jocko to use a military, typically a kinetic example, and then flip that point around and give an exact same civilian example, whether it's in business or just life. And for guys like us, right, that have lived both lives now, that communication to us, I feel like is and communication is everything in life, right? Um, in that two-way communication. In a book, you don't get that, but what the ability for us to connect those principles. I think there's so much value in even a basic book, and I don't say basic like in a down story. I have mad respect for what Jocko's done both militarily and professionally, in the civilian world. But that ability to say everything within my AO is influenced by me. My relationship with my boss, like that's like the number one. Like start with that. The guys that walk around saying my boss sucks. I hate my boss. He's a terrible leader. She's a terrible leader. Right? You need to go read Jocko's book. It's going to talk about the fact that you're not owning that relationship up, right? Or maybe it's an outside vendor. Maybe it's an adjacent unit. All those things have to be owned. So I would say like that's, if there's one thing that I try to instill both in my really, really young lieutenants that check in their alphas and they're going off to their companies, their platoons, that's number one. And then even the guys that have been around a while, like even fellow majors, right, that are in different billets in the battalion, like all the way down, like guys, like pick up the book, read it a second time, really think about how that impacts. And that ability to, I would say, execute increases then. We find in the civilian world and in the military, that whole idea of you can't control everything, and you can't, but you stop becoming successul. You stop executing when you get into the minutia of things. So to be reminded over and over again that you've got execution of everything. Like an award sitting in IAPS for too long, or a fitness report that's just 60 or 90 days late. When I'm and awards are a big deal for me right now. I get my company commanders and go, end of tour awards for your guys. Like I don't care what rank. Like why aren't they getting written? Why aren't they in the system? Like that's a priority to me. Then it should be a major priority to you. And just instilling that whole, all right, what's my battle rhythm so I can accomplish those things. But I would tell you, man, like my very minor experience in the Marine Corps and life, like I stand at the freaking feet of giants, right? Like guys that, are so much more adept to life and everything. And so the things that I keep taking away now is going, you got to keep learning. I'll use this example. I just started doing jujitsu a couple of months ago with my boys. My
Nice.
oldest started wrestling, and I did the Marine Corps martial arts program all the way up to black belt. But I haven't done that shit in 12, 13 years, right? So I go into the dojo with my sons, and my 15-year-old is becoming quite the young man. He's getting an adult body, and he's interested in being a little savage, which I love. But sitting there and being a student, a day one student. Before we got on the podcast, you pulled out a camera. You're like, dude, I'm so stoked. Like, I'm learning this. I'm so passionate about it. You're becoming a day one student with that camera, right? And I can tell you this because I was a day one student with a very similar camera, like a year ago. That I'm still very much a day one student. But whether it's listening to a book, whether it's sitting down with someone that you respect and they can help you think through a problem, you shut your mouth and they talk and you just listen and you ask thoughtful questions. Or for me, it's getting on the mat and getting my ass kicked every single night. Like, man, that, and I love like I'm terrible at jujitsu, man. I'm gonna tell you right now. I probably rolled 12 bouts last night, and I probably had one that was moderately successful. Right, the rest I just got smashed and beat up. But I like chess, so for me, jujitsu, there's a parallel, right? It's chess with your
Yep.
body. But my boys love it, so I get that connection with my boys. But man, being a day one student, picking up a book, I'm lucky that I get to go have coffee with a bunch of old guys in our town of Flagstaff. I could go every morning. They go every morning, and they're all kind of like on the verge of retirement, or they've retired, all at the top of their game. Lawyers, doctors, major business owners. And I love sitting down and asking, "Hey guys, like what books are you reading?" And one of them is into Audible, so he's always sending me stuff like, "Hey, check this book out. Think you might like it." Some of it's historical, some of it's fiction, some of it's whatever. But just having someone that can feed you new things that's not on your feed,
Yes.
right? And I had a conversation with my good friend and now one of my business partners, Brandon. He was a Marine, he was a corporal, he was a combat engineer, and he started with our company 4 years ago now, and he's now a partner in our business, which to me is like the ultimate success, right?
Right.
Like he managed one of our small stores at the time, worked his way up, and had the ability to buy into the company. And I welcomed him with
Yeah,
open
that's
arms,
awesome.
like
That is
so
awesome.
cool. And he's tenacious, he's hardworking. He's extremely creative. We have very different backgrounds when it comes to like how we grew up and all that great stuff, which is great, right? You got those different opinions and perspectives in life. But see, where's it going with that? Where was I going with that? I totally lost my train of thought. I was getting excited about talking about Brandon. Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I got oh, he had gone talked about Brandon taking it's him taking the ability to get the ownership in the company. I guess just working your way up and like sticking to um you passing down the
right.
leadership. Yeah, I don't know, kind of
Yeah,
like a,
maybe
I
with
got sucked into
education.
oh yeah, oh being a day one student, being a day one
Yeah,
student
be a
and
day
like
one
learning,
student.
yeah.
Yeah. So like, I go back to like listening to books and having that outside. I know where I was going with this. That outside perspective. Um, we grew up very different. You grew up on the East Coast. I grew up on the West Coast, or Arizona, not the West Coast. But having that different perspective. But I think more importantly, when we're on our phones, we're all on our phones a lot, right? There's no denying that, and that's not going to change. So the whole like put your phone down, like dude, it's not going to stop. Your information is now derivative through this tiny little screen. Where our parents, their information was derivative from a newspaper or a television, broadcast with Dan Rather, at night, right? Like, hey, we're not doing that anymore. We get our information through this little tiny screen that you and I are both looking at right now. But being able to get outside suggestions and information that's not on your feed. And your feed can be anything, not just Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. Your feed is who's texting you, who's not texting you. Like all those things are directing us towards that. So to me, as dude, a veteran, business owner, someone just trying to earn it every day, having someone drop in a couple little droplets of stuff that would never hit my radar, that is so crucial to me that, I go across the street and have coffee with these old guys and I'm the young guy at the table, that they're for purely entertainment purposes only. And they're solving the world's problems. Um, that's the one thing that I'm just like, I want to be selfish about. Like, hey, Ed, what's on your Audible today? Can I look through your Audible account? And he hands me his phone. And he's like, hey, man, I think you'd really enjoy this one on Cleopatra. It was really cool. And stuff that you would never think about, right? So having those outside guys, having friends like you and I, like I want to connect with you more outside of this just to go like, hey, what are you doing? Because it's new. It's new. And that's the same thing with your relationship with your significant other, with your kids, with your parents. Like you get stagnant. And we go through ebbs and flows. And that's we were talking about that earlier, the whole aspect of when you get out of the Marine Corps, we all put on a little bit of weight. We all grow a freaking gray beard. We do those things, right? Like I did it. You've done it. Everybody that listens to this podcast has done it. It's hard to get your mind turned back in the fact like that's where I was. I was at my physical peak, right? You probably weren't, but I say that like
I
really
know,
adjust towards
yeah,
myself,
yeah,
right? Like, but then you go, man, I don't know if I can dedicate the time and effort to get back to that. So I'm not even going to do it at all.
right.
Right. But I think what I've learned, and I turned 40 this year, and maybe I'm going through midlife crisis. I don't know, man. I'll just tell you, like, what I've learned is like, dude, you got to ride those waves up and down. Like, they're gonna be success in your personal relationship with your significant other, your business partners. If you're in education with those folks that you're around, you're still in the military, in the Marine Corps. Like, dude, you're gonna have highs and lows. It's okay. You're going to be more productive some days than you aren't on other days. That's okay too. As long as you don't throw in the towel. Like that to me
Yep.
is, that's a non-start. Like, dude, maybe there's a morning you're not going to get up at 5 a.m. next week. Hey, there's plenty of mornings where I know I'm very grateful to be in my warm bed and
Yes.
not go outside to go toil in
Yes.
the cold. And I've lost that fight. That's okay. That's okay. But when it becomes a trend, that's when you need to look in that mirror and go, man, I'm not taking care of base one.
Yep.
I can't take care of base one. The rest is gonna fall. It's all gonna suffer.
I wish I had a whiteboard. I should do that, like get like a whiteboard behind us so I could like draw some things. But like you think about life in this, everybody wants this like straight up trajectory, right? Or like
Yeah.
a clean, path. But what we do is like you see this progression, 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 and you might get to this point where you come back around and you loop around, but you can stay in that negative loop, or you can come back, like like you've got these loops that you're going to go through and the
Yep.
waves that you're going to go up and down. And everybody has been through these experiences, right? Everybody in some way, shape, or form has dealt with some sort of stress, trauma, or stuck in the mud feeling of being in this rut where you can't get out of, right? But that where you talk about, these relationships that you build and the people that you have around you and taking in that new information, being open to go sitting with this group of old guys that you may or may not have anything in common with, but you're willing to take in some of that like outside experience or outside information. And I think that goes to show like be having that open and honest communication with being comfortable. And I'm not saying you got to go out there and shout it on top of the roof that like I'm having a bad day today, but you can revert back to those people that you have in place, right? Your close group of people to rely on. And if you're just like it could be you to a senior officer, or it could be your platoon sergeant to you. It could be that PFC to a lance corporal. It could be the store manager to the regional manager. Whatever it is, but you might say, no one's going to know how you're feeling. Nobody's reading your mind. And when those bad days come along, it is totally okay to go up to somebody and say, like, hey, Nishan, today I'm just like, I'm struggling a little bit. And you don't have to go into detail, but X, Y, and Z, do you think like the help is always right within arm's reach? It's right in front of you.
Yep.
Being able to ask or the questions, it's not being able to rely on those people around you and being open and willing to that strengthens relationships beyond so many different things, is being able to connect with people like that. And you never know who's going to be able to give you that sound advice or give you an outlet or a way to handle those things. So that's another thing that I've been really focused on opening my mind to, is being a better communicator, because that helps with work, that helps with
Yep.
will help with school when I get there, with the relationship with my children, with everything. So, um,
Being in
we've
that, and I'll say, like man, like be in a book, like at all times. Like, I do not have the time space that allows me to open up a physical book every day, right? Because I am, I'm a 5 bells, I'm awake doing something. I try to help with the kids, take kids to the school 2 to 3 days a week. Okay. I'm moderately successful at that. Um, and then I've got all my commitments, both civilian and Marine Corps, right? But so to me, like, until my head hits the pillow at 10 o'clock, after I'm tired when I go to bed every day. I promise you that. Like, I sleep well, but I don't. If I were to just pick up a book at night, this is my excuse, right? I'm going to fall asleep in 2 minutes. I'm going to get 2 pages in, and I'm done. So to me, in my transit time, I'm either on the phone or I'm listening to a book. I'm not listening to a ton of podcasts right now because I'm just not. It's just where I'm at in my ebb and flow, right? But I would say, if you're not in a book at all, that's I would say, hey, you want to start adding to a book, right? Your tool chest right now. Get in a book. Like, for me, it's Audible. I always have a book I'm listening to. I may get to it 3 times a week. I may get to it one time that week. It may only be a half an hour. I may be in the car for 2 hours, so I get a big chunk done. But being in someone, you're borrowing someone else's brain for a minute. And you talked about communication. And when you get into a book, both reading and listening, you're borrowing their thoughts. You're learning how to communicate how they communicate even if the the content's completely germane to what you're in. Like I said, I just finished this book on Cleopatra. It was like, I like history, but not enough to sit down and go, I'm gonna study, I want to sit here and get in this book. But one of the other guys who recommended it, just finished it. That's why it's top of mind. And man, I was just like, he was a savage, bro. Like, she's like, the principles that she applied, the chess game that she applied to her life was just incredible, right? I think the book before that, it was actually a fiction book, which I rarely listen to fiction, but I got to get in that author's head for a minute and borrow his thought process. And I feel like, I can't quantify this. Maybe you could talk to my employees and they would tell you. I feel like it helped. All those little things help get you to become a better communicator, really.
For sure.
Um, and I think just like turning the tables and going, man, if there's one thing that you take away from this podcast, guys, download Audible, listen to this podcast, but take a break from it, a couple days a week, spend 30 minutes, spend an hour. I like to put the little, I can't listen to stuff at like the one, right? Regular speed. I put it up to, 1.2 and 1.3 pretty regularly. My brain can kind of keep up. Anything faster than that, I can't do it. I know guys that listen to stuff way faster, but man, borrow that brain, get drop in those extra
Yeah.
tidbits.
Oh, it's like you think of books. I mean, regardless if you're listening to it or reading it, like these are points of people's lives and history that they've lived through these experiences and they're now passing that down on like it's forever something that you can refer back to. And I had this quote that I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but I don't know if he's a philosopher and author, but Kierkegaard, I don't know, it's some old.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yep.
he says life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards.
That's
Like
such a good quote, man. That's such
and
a
that's like I think it hits the nail on the head with that point of like you're ingesting in all this information that people have already gone through the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations, the failures and the successes, and they've got it bam written right there. So you have the ability to take that stuff in. If you're get like on if you look at the page, Justin Egan was the one who gave me this like quote or what like stay stagnant or be kinetic, right? Like we can sit and think that I am the expert, I am the subject matter expert, I am the most infantry man in the world, or I am the most successful businessman in the world. If you have this mindset where you've reached that peak, like you've always got to be a student. You've always got to be taking this stuff in. You're opening yourself up to new experiences and taking in new knowledge. Because if you're just like, well, I'm the best manager at Gunfighter Canyon, and I know how to, like this Glock 19 and this M4 and this M249, like those are my platforms that what are going to happen if somebody comes in and they want to, well, I want to shoot the MG42 or I want to shoot a Luger. I want to shoot like you have to be able to shift and know all these different things in order to be successful in this wide vast of, obtaining all that knowledge.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
um,
Let's talk about mental health for a second, Michael,
yeah,
because
yes.
Mike, you're walking down, Michael. I'm your mother hooks up
Yeah.
to you right now. No, no, Mike, like let's talk about mental health for a second, because I will tell you, like, this year of all years, and I am not a depressed person. I don't feel like I'm overly. I feel like I'm probably more positive than I should be. And most people that start their own businesses are probably uh, more than cautiously optimistic. They're probably more optimistic than they should be. This year, for some reason, man, I struggled with certain things. I felt like I was becoming depressed in certain areas, and I could not pin it down. Like, no, I had a former employee that committed suicide earlier this year, and I was really trying to pin it on that. I was like, man, he was in the army, and he's a good kid, and I happened to be one of the last people that talked to him, and I was like internalizing that, and I was going, man, is this why I feel the way I feel, right? And I wasn't really acknowledging the fact that I felt like shit, right? It wasn't, and everything in life seemed to be going fine. I said, and I was like, well, is it that one thing, or is it the fact? And one of the guys at coffee actually mentioned, they're like, hey man, you seem like you're not, kind of like the fire's not there in your belly. What's going on? And I was like, well, things are actually good. We're getting ready to go on our busy season. Everything Marine Corps is great. Got a great boss, great guys, great commanders right now. Um, I don't know. I can't answer that question. And I realized, like you were just talking about, like, you start to coast, You coast into this whole thing of I've figured it out. I'm successful here. I can do these actions and it'll get I know what the result's going to be. Totally, totally acceptable, right? I think that's probably the most dangerous place you can be in a mental health position. And I didn't, this is just something I'm discovering, right? So I haven't figured it all out. But I'll tell you, for me, when you're on the upswing, like right now, you're on the upswing. You're like, dude, I'm changing what my morning routine looks like. You're on an upswing right now. Positive mental, right? Your mental's capable. Your mental is getting. You feel good. You feel accomplished. There's all these things that bring up your mental health, and then you're going to go through a period where you could coast, or instead of coasting, go into, and I challenge you this, go into recovery mode. You're either in growth mode or you're in recovery mode. But when you start doing this straight line bullshit, right? This, I figured it out. I'm just gonna, I know what x plus y equals z, right? That is when, for me at least, and I think for all Marines, right? I'm gonna speak for just Marines here, and even combat arms Marines, right? Like, we need to be going up. And then when we come back from a deployment or an exercise or workup or a school, like a tough school, we go into recovery mode, right? We go on leave, we don't PT as much, or maybe we PT more because it's time for you to the way you mentally recover. But it's when we have those straight lines. And I know for me, and that's what I kind of caught myself going, no, it wasn't just the fact that, my friend Tim killed himself. It wasn't just the fact that I lost another Marine earlier this year. It wasn't the fact that, I had all of these, losses, right? It really wasn't that. It's just that I was kind of just stagnant. I was just kind of like not going, like you said, where's the fire in your belly? Well, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And what I should have done is been like, you know what? I'm going to go into recovery mode. And that means I'm going to unplug for days, weeks, whatever, right? I'm going to actively tell my Marine Corps boss, my board of directors at Gunfighter, my direct reports, my partners, and say, hey, I'm going to take 72 hours and I'm going to recover. Because when you come out of that recovery, now you're back in that loop and you're going up. So I
Yeah.
would challenge everyone that's struggling mental, with whether it's positivity or a form of depression or maybe your PTSD. And I was thinking the same thing. My PTSD is like was starting to get to me, and I was becoming an excuse, right? Like okay, I'm gonna start blaming these things. Instead, I wasn't planning my life. I wasn't playing chess with my life. I was just playing checkers. One move, two moves, three moves. No, I should be playing 10 moves ahead, 8 moves ahead. And so I will tell you, like, just this year, and I'm just figuring this out right now, man. I know if I start to feel like I'm going to do that little slide, shut the fuck up, Nishan. Why don't you go into recovery mode? For me, recovery mode is I'm going to unplug. I'm not going to go to work for a couple of days. I'm not going to, touch. I'm going to let my military side know I'm not going to do it, and I'm probably going to PT the living shit out of myself. Like that's how I can get back to center. Other guys are going to be like, no, man, I'm going to unplug. I'm going to do, I'm not going to PT. But you're planning it, and I think that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and that's good. Like you're setting yourself up for like think of like a sound wave, right? And in like the ebb and flow of like how you get the highs and the lows, right? And then when you see it could be like a heartbeat monitor or like
Yeah,
that decibel, like that flat line, there is no progression, there is no noise. Like you have to have that up and down, the peaks and the lows, and you go through this thing and it's contained within this, principles or standards and boundaries that you have for yourself, and then you go through these points, right? Like sometimes it might go up and you might be in these really high peaks and you're like feeling on top of the world and you go really low. But if you establish these baselines for your life
yeah,
and you keep those regulated in between and you're not staying at that main, that dead decibel or whatever it is. And with the post-traumatic stress stuff, like I've recently just came back from this program, Warrior Path, through the Boulder Crest Foundation, and it's progressive and alternative training for helping heroes, law enforcement, EMS, military veterans, and they talk about post-traumatic growth. And these like I've got this written down.
yeah,
I've got these domain like the 5 domains of post-traumatic growth, right? So spiritual and existential change, right? Like these things that you're implementing in your life to change the outlook that you have on things, your personal strength, right? Your we talk about the PT, appreciation for life. That's showing that gratitude and opening yourself up to new possibilities, which is the another one of these five domains. And then the last one would be those deeper relationships. And you can implement all these things. Like you can stay in that, like focusing on the post-traumatic stress, right? All these traumatic incidents and these things that have happened to you. And everybody that's been in that situation knows that that's not a good thing for your mental health. You talk about doing therapy and you talk about these things, but you could, like, are you going to be a person that talks about it, or are you going to be a person that is being about it and you're
Yep.
actually enacting? Because we can sit here, well, I know the things that I'm struggling with. I know the things that get me down. I know the things that are my stressors. I know those things that get my, anxiety high, or my anger, my irritability up. Okay, then what are you doing to actually make a change with those
Yeah.
things? If you just want to live in that baseline, and stay stagnant, like you're never going to give yourself that ability to growth and move on from the ability for growth to move on from those things and make, better in your life. We go through these we talk about never let struggle go to waste, right? Like you're going to be in
Oh,
this
I love
this
that.
like
Yeah.
you survive with things, or you cope with these things and you live with them, but break through that line of living with these things and thrive and utilize, like you got to go through these experiences of traumatic, stressful, anxiety ridden, anger ridden moments, right? To give you an understanding of the things that you need to fix in your life and making yourself better. The mental health thing is an absolute problem. And there's got to be more ways to address the situation, right? Like that's why I think nonprofit organizations out there that are getting people involved, getting them back in the community to build like like one, oh man, I don't talk to the guys in my unit anymore. I don't have good relationship with my family. Why not? What are you not opening up about? What are you afraid to talk about? Why are you so standoffish from things? Like, well, I have my job at, and there's nothing wrong with working at Home Depot. Well, it's like I have my job at Home Depot. I'm not really looking to grow. I'm not looking to progress myself. Why am I not opening myself to these new possibilities? Why don't I appreciate life and the things that are around me? Why am I not grateful for a roof over my head, for food in my fridge, for the people that are there to support me? And it's like all these things that if you start to change the way that you take that shit in, it's like garbage in, garbage out. You start taking some of that good stuff in, all
Yep.
that knowledge, the relationships that you have with people, you're going to start, like putting that off and changing the vibe that you have. And I'm really fortunate that I have people that have been there to support me through these dark times that I've had in my past, because without them, who knows where I would be and what I would be doing right now. And unfortunately, I think, you talking about that guy that had worked for you ultimately making the decision to take his own life. It's like if through the things that you and I can talk about and bring to awareness, and we continue to do those things, and it's like the things that you and I talk about right now could impact somebody in Michigan, because we're going to get off, we might be on the phone with somebody, talking to somebody, blah blah blah. That's going to Somebody might hold the door open for an old lady in Michigan today because they feel like, man, I feel good about, like, help me hold the door for you, ma'am. Come on in. And that lady's gonna, whoa, that was so nice, Sonny. Like she buys the piece of candy for a little kid. That's all of these things that we can do. We can implement this ripple effect change with the actions and the outlook that we have on life and really impact people in a positive way. And I think that what you and I are doing here, and what I've done with all the guys previously and gals, is talk about the way that we can implement these changes in life and to make these differences and to impact people and give them the opportunity to know that, like, there are better things that you can do out there. And let me just give you a hug. Let me bring it in. Let's talk about these things and find a way to make some differences and some changes in your life, and giving the people like the knowledge, right, that you're implementing on me, that in turn is going to get put up on YouTube or Spotify for somebody to listen to. And you never know what's going to spark that fire and get that fire back in. It could be a book from Audible that you just brought up, or talking about opening yourself up to a new experience or new relationships. And we can, if it changes the mindset of one person, if it saves the life of one person, at
Yep.
the end of the day, that is all that matters.
That's enough. That's enough. Like you don't need any more.
Yeah.
And I think you know, especially as Marines, we want that pinnacle. We want to take that hill every single time, right? And there will be moments you're going to get to do that, but it's not every moment. It's not every day.
Yep.
And the guys that, look at Tom Danielson, right, who is now running the Black Rifle Coffee Company, but his success came way before that. Prior Marine grunt officer. He ran, what was the name of that company? Panda Express. He took Panda Express from nothing to what it is today,
Oh
right?
shit.
So I would say like, hey, this is almost his retirement job, and I don't know Tom Danson personally, but man, you want to talk about someone, another Marine that's like, I'm sure he could sit down and tell us just some amazing stories of not just success, but just like complete failure and learning lessons to go. And for me, man, it's like I make some fucking terrible mistakes every week, right? And like, man, I handled that terrible. Whether it's transactional, more importantly, relationship based. And I think for that mental health piece, it's like, man, shut up, listen. What's that other person across the table really, really telling you? You know, what are they really? How do they really feel about it? Can you help them change their perspective, or maybe you're the one that needs to change their perspective?
Yeah, and on
And
that, saying that too, it's like where you have to, like more often than not listen with our heads, right? But we have to start thinking about listening with our hearts, like genuinely engaging with people and making like all those body language things, like, and that's one of those things that I had to relearn over the last week in the 10-hour plus days of training in the classroom and going over these practices that you implement. And having that open mind and open heart when you're actually engaging with somebody really changes how
yep,
you're taking that information in and understanding that the person on the other side of the table has struggle as well. You walk around
yep,
with a chip on your shoulder like you are the only one that has been affected by some sort of negative in your life. You never know what that other person is going through or what experiences they had to get them to the position that they are in today. So that's where that communication really plays a factor in making these things come into play.
being a leader is tough, right? Like, I, I it's lonely too, right? I remember looking out my office when I was company commander. My first sergeant just left my office, talking about some really heavy stuff. I needed to make a decision, right? I remember looking out my window and just going, "This sucks." Like, I would literally rather be anywhere else than trying to figure out what the right decision is, here. And at that point, I started having pity on myself, and it was just like, I wrote a little note to myself on my phone, like, why is leadership one of the most lonely places in the world to be? It doesn't have to be. It can be, and there are times that it is. But I think being real, and what I really appreciate about my guy Brandon now, that's one of my partners, right? He's kind of like my little brother. And it's like, there was a point this month where I was just like, man, I know I've been a dick to you. I know I've not been, a good friend and a mentor and a leader, and I've not, given you, the respect that's been due on both sides. I'm struggling with this. This has really been bothering me, I think, right? And to have that change completely, and I watched his face just change. It went from, instead of like animosity or like just the fact that clearly he wasn't happy either, right? But it's just like, I was being real with the fact that, hey man, cut me some. Really appreciate you cut me a little bit of slack the next couple of days, right? I'm gonna level set. I'm gonna come back and we'll figure this out. But we get to have those two-way conversations. Now, if you're a leader and you're doing that every week, like, hey dog, you're not taking care of yourself first, so you've got other things coming. But I think in those moments, right, and I've had great bosses, both civilian and leader, so civilian and military, do the same thing. Be like, hey Nishan, like, I'm really struggling with this, and being real. I had my guys read a book that I read earlier this year. It was called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's a book about a guy that built one of the most famous restaurants in the world. Um, And a lot of the stuff in the book probably not going to resonate with you. A lot of it certainly didn't resonate with me. I thought the guy came across very condescending and very silver spoonish. But there was a lot of stuff in that, right, that was very relevant to our business. Our business resembles what a
Service.
restaurant would be
Yeah.
in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. Yeah. And there was a portion in the book, and I remember it, but it wasn't impactful to me, where the restaurant had a code system, and it was like how they held their hands. Like, you would put their hand behind their back when they were talking to a table, and it meant they needed something, or they were in distress, or they were having a bad day, right? and then someone else could cue in on that in support. So, we like to say at Gunfighter, we got three big tenets. One, assume positive intent. It's too easy for a bunch of veteran guys to get in a room and go, that motherfucker is trying to do this because of a negative intent. So our number one tenet is assume positive intent. Okay. Number two is prioritize and execute, because it's like the easiest thing in the world, right? You can do those two things, you're pretty much 90% there. And so let me get assume positive intent, prioritize and execute. And the last one is cover and move. And that means we never do anything alone, right? And so if you're having a bad day, like, you need to let someone know. Or if you're struggling to do X, Y, and Z, like if I go on the range with a new gun and I haven't been on the range in a couple of weeks, dude, I will absolutely go grab one of my RSOs and say, hey man, run me through this real quick. What's the most common failure to fire? So I know how I can remediate. What's remediate action on this firearm? Boom. We cover and move. Everything we do, there's somebody covering you.
Yeah.
And in that book, that's what they were talking about. Basically, it's a cover and move. It's a cover and move thing. It's like, hey, and one of my store managers at a different store, he's like, I already do that with my assistant manager. Like, we already have like this thing, like they say something and it's totally irrelevant to anybody in the room, but it's like, I'm having a difficult time with this group of people or these customers. Can you come support me?
Right.
And I was like, yes, like you didn't learn that from the book, but it reinforced exactly what you were already doing and kind of put it in perspective. So
Yeah. And with that, it's like if you correlate that with work and needing a hand with something, or if you correlate that in life with the struggles that you may be dealing with, it doesn't always have to be like as something as the restaurant utilizing like hand and arm signals, right? You don't have to get on top of the roof, like I said earlier, on top of the tallest building
yeah,
and shout these things out for everybody to hear. But, utilizing like a small, you know, team leader on
yep,
me or squad leader
yep,
on me,
yep,
kind of hand and arm signal. If you're in a situation where you got uh, a bachelor party of 8 dudes coming in to shoot some machine guns or whatever it is, and you got one guy and he's like, oh shit, like I might need a hand here. Or in life, like, hey, like I'm really, like mentally I'm not doing okay or whatever it is. You don't have to make the entire room known, but somebody can pick up on those things if you I guess communicate and coordinate properly. So I think
it's
that's
the
the
acknowledgement of it, in itself is liberating, right? Just acknowledging the fact, like, I need some cover on this, right? I'm not having a good day. I'm really having some depressing thoughts about this. Just the acknowledgement of it in its very essence, just right there. Now you can start building on top of that. Now you
yep.
can, to me, that's helped to me. And again, you and I are both not mental health professionals here. We're certainly not going to go, have people
Right.
go subscribe to some stupid
Yeah.
coaching
Right.
thing.
Right.
Like, we're not psychologists, but we know what works for us. And I think that's where that resonates, I think, almost better. I mean, you
Yep.
and I have both, I know I've talked to mental health professionals with the VA. I don't know if you have or not, but you only get so much out of that. It's good. Do it. Don't encourage you, don't discourage anyone to do that. But those real conversations seem to go a whole lot, are a lot more meaningful.
And I mean, through all the things that I've been able to do, I work with not work with, but there's an organization out there called the White Heart Foundation, and they have this project called the Guardian Project, and my buddy is the guy who started that and leads it. But they've asked me to come on as a group mentor now and like take a more active role in this nonprofit, which in turn I really hope leads to a position, like to work for them. Um, but you get into these things like there are so many more opportunities out there. Everybody will complain about the VA isn't doing this for me, the VA.
Right.
What are you doing to be proactive if they're not going to meet the needs or get that done in the time frame? There's so many nonprofit organizations out there, locally, regionally, nationally, that people can take advantage of that will help assist in those things that they're struggling with, right? There's ways to get connected. There's help that's out there, whether you need monetary or it's gym equipment or it's a freaking bicycle or a jiu-jitsu scholarship or an outdoor therapy retreat,
Yeah.
whatever it is, there are multiple avenues out there. With that being said, are there things that you see or that you have participated in that you can plug, like a nonprofit organization that you partake in or that you've created or anything like that could be a resource for somebody out there?
Yeah. So I got plugged in with this organization here in Flagstaff. They were called NASA, which is in Northern Arizona. Um, it's like ski and outdoors deal. But what they were doing is they were taking veterans, specifically like disabled veterans who lost limbs, and helping them go through an adaptive program where they could ski or snowboard. And so we would go up on the mountain and ski with these guys. And some of them weren't combat related. Some of them were, like I skied with this one guy who had lost a leg because he had diabetes, and he was a fighter pilot, an Air Force fighter pilot, and nothing to do with his time of service, but that's just where he was at in life. And so, to spend an afternoon with him, and he was a colonel, and it was just a lot of fun, right? Like we got to go. He's on a sled, skiing on a sled, which is, crazy that you can still you can do that kind of stuff.
Right.
But they're super great. I think they're called just adaptive programs nationally now. My friend Alex Davenport, he was a Marine, Amtracker as well. Started that organization. But their adaptive program has been really cool. I've applied for the We Defy Foundation Jiu-Jitsu scholarship. I haven't heard back yet, so crossing my fingers that comes through. Um,
Nice.
they seem to do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah,
But
they
no,
they
I
they
think
do.
we have a project, I think, that's coming up here with the Wounded Warrior Project. I know there was some negativity with them in the past. I know I've not personally been involved in their stuff, but talking with their organization this last year, I think we're going to be doing stuff with them going forward.
Yeah,
So
and
they're
that
still
that
good
being
people.
said, on the Wounded Warrior thing, there was like a a a problem with allocation of funds and where they were going, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty like 99% sure that they have fixed that problem
Yep.
since. So that's one of those things like, they've redeemed themselves, or at least they've taken the steps to redeem themselves or get on the right track. And it's never a bad thing, to because you never know what kind of opportunities that partnership is going to open up in terms of the people that you're going to get connected with and the people that you'll be able to help. So
Yep.
it's that people have their reserves, or they have their contemplations on whether or not that's a good organization. You being the guy that I'm pretty sure that you do some in-depth research on these things, and you're going to ensure that
Yep.
it doesn't go to the side and get messed up. Um, that you'll be fine. If
Yep.
I look forward to seeing what you guys get together. I'm actually trying to right now with this organization, merging vets and players. It's a national organization, but the Chicago chapter is ran by a great friend of mine, Oscar Cush. He was a Marine, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, Mortarman. Um, he is unbelievable in the hard work that he puts into this organization. Anyways, he's gotten connected with the NFL alumni organization in the Chicagoland area, and we're going to be doing a range day, and I'm going to be the lead instructor in coordinating all this stuff and how it happens. We're going to get all these NFL athletes together with a bunch of these veterans. We're going to get out, have a barbecue. I'm going to get out there, run them through some courses of fire and familiarization stuff with Glock 19 and AR and maybe an AK and a shotgun, but get them to do some drills, some courses of fire.
Yeah.
Get these guys to work together, and it's going to be a pretty cool thing. I'm looking forward to getting that going.
Dude, I love that. I love that. That's awesome. When you guys decide you want to do something in Arizona, hit me up. We'll
Yeah,
donate some
I
range
I
time
will. Yeah,
together.
I can actually reach out. I can. I will. I'm fortunate and I'm grateful that you and I have been able to chat. And not that I'm like trying to end this right now, but I just want to say that through these open lines of communication and you and I connecting with each other, I think that there's potential for some great things to happen, and people that I can connect you with, and an impact that you can make bigger than you're already doing. So it's like little things like this
Dude,
just show,
always.
there's so much potential for awesome stuff to happen.
Always. I'd be remiss to not to mention. I want to mention Wishes for Warriors. A
Yes.
friend of mine, Brian Marshall. He was actually my instructor at the amphibious officer course. He was a staff sergeant at the time, or sergeant at the time. He got out as a staff sergeant. Brian and I stay in contact, and his organization, Wishes for Warriors, does some really really cool stuff. Um, and that's another great one. We talk about like don't be solely reliant on the government and the VA and all that stuff. You've got all these great organizations. We have an acronym. We have like a saying for that at Gunfighter, and I don't know who came up with it. I don't want to give credit where credit's due. It wasn't me, but we call them a TROG. TROG stands for totally reliant upon government. And in the gun industry, we deal with a lot of bro vets, and
Oh,
we,
yeah, I'm sure.
there's a bro vet culture. Look, you can call me a bro vet. Like I'm okay with it. There's a negative stigma that goes with bro vets, right? And when you get that one dude that comes in and is like, nah, I got my life all figured out. I'm 100% disabled. I have no expenses. So, this is where I'm at in my life and I'm going to spend the rest of my life totally reliant on the government.
Yep.
Right. And I think you're in absolute coast mode when you do that. So, hey man,
Yes.
you're 100% good for you. Like you earned it. That's part of the process. Well, what are you doing now? Right. Like, let's go through get those peaks before you go back to those valleys, but don't be a trog.
Yes.
Don't be a trog.
And
Um,
I've been guilt not that I'm guilty of that I still maintain a job, and I have my VA disability, but honestly, that should be like a tertiary,
yeah,
so that should be like an investment source or like a savings source.
that's your gun money.
Yes, yeah, seriously, that would
That's,
do not tell Victoria. That is why I have
yeah,
dual tube NVGs and why I have an ops core lid with freaking Peltors and 4 plate carriers and who knows how many
that's your gun money,
firearms.
man. Yeah, like don't be a trog. Don't
Yeah.
be a trog.
So
There's so many.
and
Life is too cool.
yeah, definitely. And on that note, like, some people are very like hesitant to take advantage of those VA disability, like
Correct.
if you deserve it, regardless of where you were injured, how you were injured, what your service record looks like, and all that thing is like just because you don't have a certain colored ribbon that sits on your chest that costs
Yep,
$2.30 to buy at the fucking PX, um, doesn't mean that, like somebody does or doesn't rate something. And
that's
I
right.
then I know that there's a lot of veterans out there, even some of my junior Marines that, like that are my friends, that are my brothers now. Like after that time, like we've created and built relationships. They're like, they still call me Corporal G. I'm like, dude, they're like, yeah, I don't know, man.
Stop that shit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
like, what's up, Corporal G? Like, I'm like, did you get your VA shit taken care of yet? And they're like, I just haven't gotten around. I'm like, do it. Get it. Even if you get 10%, 30%, 50%, 100%,
Whatever.
whatever it is, it's like a supplemental source of income that's going to set you up to, hey, maybe you've been kind of struggling with your regular income and now you've got this extra little bit of income. It helps out with advantages to state parks and
Yep.
property tax and school incentives for your kids and health insurance incentives for your family. So it's not just the monetary aspect. There's
It's
other
not.
things
It's
that
not.
come into play with that, and it's important. Um, so
Every employee that comes to Gunfighter that's a veteran, that's one of the first questions we ask them. Have you filed a VA disability claim? If the answer is no, the next question is, well, why? Right. And then if it's, well, I have, and it's, well, okay, what's your percentage X? Cool. We have resources to help you increase that rating.
that's
Right.
awesome.
And,
Awesome.
and so I would say good, every one of our veterans has some sort of rating with the VA. And we have a lot of dudes that have very, the highest ratings you can get with the VA. And it's you're not taking advantage of a program. It's like, look, if you it's money that's going to be there, and if you rate it, you need to go get it. And
Yep.
so where I am hard ass about that. Same thing you are. Like, hey man, we talked about this 2 months ago. Where are you at? Did you call that organization and have them submit your rebuttal claim or whatever? And it's like, well, no. I'm like, do you need me to call them for you? Is that what this is going to take? Like, because I'm not letting you off the hook on this. Like, let's go. So yeah, we do that. We talk about getting involved with your PSOB or your VA clinic that's right there, because as veterans now, under the CARES Act, we have incredible health care that everyone has, right? Any veteran that says I don't have health care, they're lying, right? Go to your PSOB, go to your local veteran, get registered there, and now you can go see a provider literally as many times a year as you need to.
Yep.
They're going to take care of everything. I mean, the VA gives me crazy stuff like, from my tinnitus, like I have terrible hearing. And I mean, most of it is all of it's Marine Corps related, but I will tell you that, between the hearing aids and I go to acupuncture, once a week, and that really
I,
helps.
I
I mean, there's cool stuff that the VA can offer you, whether it's massage therapy or if it's physical therapy or just going and having your annual checkup and getting your blood drawn and going, hey, man, your cholesterol's getting kind of high, man. You want to like take your supplements, kind of back it down. Let's reevaluate. Like, dude, I love bringing in guys that have just left or they've been out for a little while and they've let that go. Like, no, no, no. If there's one thing the gunfighter is going to help you with in life, it's going to be your process with the VA. Like, let's go. Um,
that's awesome.
so
I'm
yeah,
glad to
man.
hear that.
Yeah, I hate hearing guys saying that they're like, no, I don't deserve it. Like, no, hold on, dude, hold on. You wrote a check to the government, a blank check, and you signed your name at the bottom. It said up to the value of my life. You put in the time in the government. Go get back what's deserved to you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
don't be a trog on the other side, right?
Yeah, no,
It's a
true.
two-way street.
It's using those things to set yourself up for success and open you up to
Yeah.
those new possibilities. One of those five domains of post-traumatic growth. Um,
Yeah.
and that without being said, is something that I think that every veteran should be advocating for their brothers and sisters to go out and take advantage of those things. Use those resources that you've been given and the connections that you've made and the phone numbers that you have saved or the business cards that you get and start passing that stuff around to people and getting them aware of these opportunities that they can take. Um, we're coming up here. Well, we've spent I'm grateful that we've got the amount of time that we've had today, but I do have to move on to some other things that I got to take care of for school. I want to ask you, if you could go back and tell, Lieutenant Campbell something, when you started your career, or even beforehand, if there was something you could tell yourself that you've figured out in life now, what would that be?
Heavy question, brother. Off the cuff, and for everyone that's listening or watching, like I was not prefaced with these questions, so Mike's got his notepad and he's hitting me with these right off the jump. I would tell you, I would just say be patient with yourself. Like everyone knows their weaknesses and their strengths. For me, it's just like, hey, Lieutenant Campbell or Nishan at you know first real job out of college, like you're gonna have plenty of time to lead people, plenty of time to make positive impact on the things that you want to have positive impact. But be patient. Like you're going to get there, and the only way to get there is with time and experience. And you can speed it up, but sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes that time, sitting at the coffee table with the guys, or sitting in the back of the AAV with your staff sergeants and gunnies having breakfast in the morning, before the troops are woken up. Like, dude, be patient. Enjoy that time. Um, you're going to get there. It's you can't stop time, both good
Yeah.
and bad. So
I think that's a tale as old as time, and it's usually best prefaced with the rabbit and the hare and the tortoise, there's a lot of um similarities in that. Like you can rush to the finish line, but you might wear yourself out on the way there.
that's right.
And if you're
Yeah.
along that little route, and it's just something that I say to I'll take the girls on a walk, and we're going around, and I'll say like, you got to stop and smell the flowers. And my oldest Meadow, she literally does stop and smell the flowers. We'll be walking along, and she's like, I'm like, what are you doing, kid? And she's like, Dad, hold on. Like she's stopping and she's smelling the flowers, enjoying the things around you. And that's a big thing. If you try to rush it, um, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities
Yep.
along the way. Um, One last question for you, and this is one that I ask everybody, regardless of where they've been and like how they participated in it. But like you had an impact, witnessing 9/11, and you went in like 9/12 to go enlist. You ended up going this college route. You watched all this stuff progress from OEF, OIF, Inherent Resolve, and you've been in the Marine Corps, a little broken time going back into the reserves through the entire global war on terror. You've seen it start to finish. Um, if there was one word that you could use to describe the global war on terror, what would that word be?
The only word and that I can come up with, a single word, Mike, is and I don't think I'm doing your question justice, so I apologize. And it's just where I'm at in my life right now. So it's just a real coming from
Yeah, it's
Nishan to
it's it's
Mike,
from
right?
it's yeah,
Like
exactly. It's your
like
your
I would tell you it's one thing, and it's duty. Um, we and it's never been more apparent to me in my life than right now. We serve at the pleasure of I serve at the pleasure of the president, but all of us serve, you know, for on behalf of the American people, right? For the American people, and regardless of who's holding that office, regardless of who is, our Secretary of Defense, that civilian leader of the military, and regardless of what that operation is, whether you agree with it personally or not. You've raised your right hand. You've said, this is my duty. You got to go. And you got to go be an absolute savage and an absolute freaking unit in whatever you're going to go do, right? No matter what you think the bullshit mission is, you know, whether it's cleaning freaking heads or if it's, actually putting rounds down range and, putting bad dudes on the ground, like that's your duty. So yeah, I would say like, yeah, if I were to summarize our generation of warfighters, that's just where I'm at right now, man. Like
Yeah.
I don't feel that anymore. Just like, hey, I could disagree, wholeheartedly with a mission or something that the president is telling us to do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's comes down to the point that when none of us were voluntold to do it. We all volunteered to do it and
That's
signing our
right.
names.
That's right.
So you don't really know what you're getting in store, or you're getting at all when you sign up for that.
Sure don't.
They're gonna put you where they need you. They're gonna send you where they need you, and they're gonna whatever your experiences is because you volunteered and signed your name on that line.
Yep.
Um, so that's a good one, duty, because we all, swore that oath and took the duty to uphold and support the Constitution of the United States against defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That's
And
right.
whatever gray area is in between, you just got to roll with those punches. And so many people get hung up on, that experience alone. And if you can take the negatives and learn to create positive from the struggle, from the pain, like struggling well.
Yeah.
You can do some really awesome things, and you've shown that you can do that. You're again, I'm not trying to put you up on a pedestal and make you, there's still work to be done and progress to be made, but you're a beacon, in the community, in the culture to do better for yourself and involve other people in with that. And that's another thing that involves with duty, right? You're continuing to serve in so many different aspects. And, I really appreciate, the dedication that you have to the veteran community now, to your morals and your principles as a man, obviously your continued service to the country. And, I'm fortunate that you and I have been able to build a relationship, and, I'm excited to see what things the future holds.
Yeah, Mike, it's been great chatting with you, brother. I think we're both on our bingo time, and
Yeah, I agree.
I really appreciate the time. And yeah, sorry I couldn't do it all in uniform in my office, but
No, it's okay.
we got it, we got it in one way or the other.
Yeah, and you got an AK in the back, you got a couple pistols hung up there, you're so it's cool. You get to see the Marine Corps side and the civilian side, and it's the same person regardless of what you're wearing, and I like seeing that.
Yeah,
So yeah, Nishan, thank you again for your time. I'm looking forward to what we can get together in the future, and yeah, take care, brother. So guys, that was
you too, brother.
Major Nishan Campbell, um, giving us his time on the Pressing Forward podcast, and best of luck with all the things that you're doing in the future, brother.
Semper Fi, Mike. Appreciate you, brother.
Semper Fi.